All right, so Kathleen hasn't joined us yet, but I'm gonna call the meeting to order. So it is 7:06, July 12th, 2022. I call this meeting of the Wellfleet Select Board to order in accordance with the temporary suspension and enhancement of the open meeting law as allowed by the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The first item on our agenda is announcements, public session, announcements, public sessions, and yeah. Please note that public comments must be brief and the board will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Are there any from other members or members of the community? So I have a couple. The first is, as you know, the Wellfleet Select Board has tried to move back into doing in-person hybrid meetings. For tonight, that wasn't an option because the technology, we have a hardware failure with a component out for repair, and without it, the systems do not work. And that hasn't, or that hopefully that's installed sometime later this week, but it's not obviously not available tonight. And we do have a number of presenters who are participating remotely. So the only way to accommodate them was to hold this meeting remotely as well. And some of these were on the agenda from our meeting at the end of June, or the first, meeting at the end of June, or was it last week? I don't remember at this point. So that's why tonight's meeting is virtual. So hopefully that's prepared for our next select board meeting, which is on the 19th. And then I would also like to take this opportunity to apologize to the Shellfish Constable, Nancy Savetta. As part of the shellfish hearings, or the initial shellfish hearing for the minimum productivity, I was a little overly critical of Nancy herself, and I just want to take this opportunity to apologize publicly for that as well. So just so everybody is aware. Yeah, I don't know, that's it really. We had our first 4th of July parade in 2 years, which was very nice. It was nice to see everybody out and celebrate. Unfortunately, as we are aware, some other areas around the country, the celebration was not peaceful. And it is kind of it is disturbing with the direction that these acts of senseless violence are going. So that's it for me. So we don't have Rebecca for the slides tonight, but I did want to highlight, so at the beginning of our meetings, I'd like to try to highlight one committee each meeting that might have a vacancy, so that maybe that people who are civically inclined would want or would be interested in joining a committee and serving the town. And the committee for this week is the Wellfleet Conservation Commission. There is one vacancy and 2 alternates. Its responsibilities is protection of natural resources in the coastline, oversees land held by the Conservation Commission, and the people or the members that serve on the committee have see the granular details about how climate change is impacting Wellfleet both now and in the future. If you're interested in joining a committee, email the town clerk at townclerk@wellfleet-ma.gov. And she can give you the required paperwork for joining a board or committee. And with that, onto the consent agenda. I just saw that Kathleen joined. So
Needs to be unmuted.
yep, getting to her.
Yeah.
So you should be good, Kathleen.
I have did we already do public comments, announcements?
Nope, you can still do one. Or we did, but we're still in it, so you can do one.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't realize the meeting was virtual. So I went to the senior center.
Yep.
Just give me a minute to get organized. Before we get to the consent agenda, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Jake Puffer for volunteering for the NRA board. Jake is a Wellfleet born and raised shell fisherman, husband, father, and he is volunteering to serve the NRA board, which he's going to be a perfect fit for. I want to mention this because, you know, it might not sound novel that Jake is born and raised here in Wellfleet. But what is truly remarkable is that Jake is still here, owns his own home, and is raising a family and has a business. This is what it takes for sustainable community. And this young man is just stellar in every way. And he's stepping up to be on this board. So I'm really grateful, but I'm also really grateful to all the volunteers who serve on the boards for the town of Wellfleet, because without them, we could not do the work that we do. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me this comment. I will get caught up here. Again, I did not realize the meeting was not in person.
Yep. Okay, so consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any board member would wish to remove from the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I move to approve the I move to approve the consent agenda as drafted without objection.
On second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote, please?
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Mike, aye.
Brian, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, and just to be clear to everybody, that's Jacob Puffer to the Natural Resources Advisory Board. Approval of the taxation aid fall insert. Douglas Stanley to the Marina Advisory Committee. And a one-day entertainment license for Matt Shack. So.
Douglas Stout.
Yeah, Douglas Strauss.
Strauss, thank you.
Sorry. It says Stout on the agenda.
Yeah.
And it said Stanley and something else. I
Typo,
appreciate it, guys.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Doug.
So public hearings. To review amendments to the Wellfleet traffic rules and regulations. There's two separate sets, and so we'll address them separately. One is 25-mile-per-hour zones. And I do know that there's members of the community that are here that might wish to speak to that. If you do, just raise your hand. There are also, one second. There are also a few letters to the board regarding this as well. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to find the letters. Okay. So there is one from Brad Richard. It's dear honorable members of Select Board, the town of Wellfleet voted to accept Chapter 90, Section 20A and 1/2 of the general laws during its June 11th, 2022 annual town meeting. I'm writing to urge the Wellfleet Select Board to select reasonable and proper speed of 25 per hours on municipally owned streets within thickly settled or business districts. I understand the Wellfleet Select Board is discussing this matter at public hearing set for June 12th, 2022, during the meeting of the Wellfleet Select Board. This matter is, as outlined in the agenda, states that the roadways being considered includes the roads that we've listed. And then in the interest of public safety, the public select board should set a 25-mile-per-hour zone or speed limit because these areas meet the definitions of being thickly settled, are contiguous with the town's commercial or central districts, lack sidewalks in areas proposed for speed limit reduction, lack marked pedestrian crosswalks, lack shoulders along the road, restricting drivers' options in case of an emergency, have narrow travel lanes, 10 to 11 feet, have heavy traffic volume, have limited driver line of sight due to multiple locations, due to the curves in the hills, and accommodate all roadway users, including pedestrians, bicycles, cars, light trucks, tractor trailer trucks, and buses. And the top benefits of limiting speed on these roads are clear. Reducing speed reduces vehicle stopping distance, which is critical in limiting line of sight situations. The stopping distance for motor vehicles reduces from 200 feet at 30 miles per hour to 155 feet at 25 miles per hour. Stopping distance is the distance for a vehicle traveling at a speed to stop before reaching a stationary object in its path. Two, reducing motor vehicle speeds provides increased awareness of pedestrians and bicyclists, improves safety for pedestrians since there are more suitable gaps for pedestrians to cross the road, and is complementary by improved yielding by drivers. The safety improvement is further compounded by reducing the probability and severity of motor vehicle collisions with pedestrians and bicyclists. When collisions do occur, on a scale to 1, no injury, to 6 fatalities, the severity of injury is reduced from 4 at 30 miles per hour to 2.5 at 25. I thank the Wellfleet Select Board in taking up this matter, and I appreciate your consideration. Respectfully, Bradley Richard. Okay. All right. I would say Chief Hurley and Jay Norton, do you have any comments about the proposed roadways and that are defined and the traffic rules and regulations for 25 miles per hour?
Sure, I can go first. Good evening, everybody. Jay Norton, DPW Director, for the record. I fully support this amendment to the traffic rules and regulations for the town of Wellfleet. We've been working with Brad and the group of individuals along East Commercial Street for about a couple of years now. We've been trying to implement signage out there. We've been working with the police department, and I really feel this is a good thing for the town, and I fully support it.
Okay. Chief Hurley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The same as Jay said, himself and the lieutenant have been working with the neighbors down there to have some help down there with the speed limit dropping down to 25. My only other thoughts, because we do have other listed roads here, and I've been working with Jay with Public Works, and this will probably be more appropriate later on in the budget season, would be, along with enforcement in these areas, is some other mitigation. And I'm sure a lot of people are seeing in many communities popping up now are solar type speed signs that, will flash if people are above the speed limit. And I just think that's a good educational tool also, because, one of the struggles with enforcement, especially during this time of year, is we just have a constant turnover, if not daily, weekly in town. And it's, if you try to focus in on an area, you're kind of losing people after a week or so. Then you got to start the enforcement over again. So that would just be a comment there. And on the draft regulations, I don't see Lieutenant Island Road, but I saw that in the public posting. I just wanted to, that is a road that comes up often in the department as a problematic area in town.
Sure. So yes, Lieutenant Island Road was supposed to be included, and it is included in the advertisement. as
Okay,
well.
great.
So we can definitely include it. The roads that are not listed, if people want to bring them up, we can, hear their comments, but we can't include them in the regs as advertised for tonight. So are there any questions or comments by members of the board at this time? Okay, I have one question. So this is a public hearing. And I want to ask the board if they want to move on it tonight or to wait till there's an opportunity for in-person as well. So I'll leave it up to the board. I don't have a strong feeling either way.
Right.
Yep. Mike?
Yeah, I guess my only reservation is the entire length of Chequesset Neck Road. Just, I'm not sure that the whole length of Chequesset Neck Road needs to be cut down to 25 miles an hour.
It's not included.
It's not, okay. Oh, I scrolled down to the second one, okay.
Yeah, it's
So just the ones in Village Core?
no, there's the Village Core,
And LeCount Hollow.
a number of other long sections of Long Pond Road. including
Okay, the
private-
other locations there.
Yeah.
But the traffic rules that were, okay, so just the first part is what we're considering.
Yeah,
Plus Lieutenant Island.
yeah, plus Lieutenant Island. And-
Okay, that's fine. I didn't have any reservations about the other streets.
Okay, Kathleen?
I'd like to move on this tonight. This has actually been a discussion that's been going on since 2017, when Ron Vassett was our chief. These very neighbors were asking to have the speed reduced then. So I'm ready to move on it tonight, if that's the will of the board.
Barbara?
Yes, I am as well, Mr. Chairman, ready to move on it tonight.
John?
I'm ready to move on it myself.
Okay. So I move to adopt the 25-mile-per-hour zones as drafted in the packet or in the traffic rules and regulations with the addition that Lieutenant Island Road is also added in the, I guess, in the entirety of its length.
Michael, second. And Mr. Chair, I don't know, I
Yep.
might have missed it if you asked if there were anyone in the audience that wants to speak.
I did at the beginning, and there's no hands up currently.
Yeah, Michael, second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Ryan, I. Mike?
Mike. Huh?
You waiting for me?
Yeah,
Oh, Michael, I don't know, I lost audio for a second.
Yeah. Kathleen?
Kathleen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. What's the second part? Sorry. I'm just trying to get to the second part here. Yeah, I guess the second part was left off. Um, Yeah, stop. Yep. Yeah, all right, so we'll leave off the second part, which is changing some stop signs. It's not in the packet, so. Josh? But we can take public comments for it because it is advertised for it. Josh, I assume this is Josh.
Yeah.
Gaston?
Yeah, hi. Hi. I just wanted to say this is a really good idea. This intersection's a bit of a mess, and I think having a throughway stop is an excellent idea. One thing I would add is where the yield sign is currently at Kendrick Avenue, the view is obstructed through the rest of the intersection by the large hedge of that house on the corner. And I would ask that whomever is the person in charge to consider moving the stop sign forward so that you could have a clear point of view to all cars stop at the intersection. Thank you.
Okay. And so this would be erecting all-way stop signs at Crescent Neck and Kendrick Ave, and Cove Road and Indian Neck and Pilgrim Spring Road intersection. Because that's not included in the pack and the draft in front of the board tonight, I continue that portion of the hearing with the agreement of the board to the 19th, which is our next scheduled meeting.
I'm all right with that.
Okay, so I move to continue the hearing on amending the traffic rules and orders in relation to all-way stop signs.
Second.
Yeah, to July 19th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Michael, aye.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Sorry, there's a lot of paper this week. David Whitman, I believe he's on here. Yep, right there. Okay, Harbor to the
Hi.
Bay.
Hi, yeah, I'm representing Harbor to the Bay. I'm bike ride. I'm sure a number of you know about it. I've actually been speaking with Mike Hurley quite a bit about it. This is our 20th year. It's a one-day bike ride from Boston to Provincetown to benefit for AIDS-related charities. 3 in Boston and the AIDS support group of Cape Cod additionally. And our ride is on September 17th. Again, it's our 20th year. Because of the last 2 years and because of COVID, we had thought our numbers were going to be a little bit higher than they actually are proving to be. We're looking at about 100 to 120 riders this year. We're right now registered with 101. And we'll be going through, the plan is to come through the rail trail. We have a small pit stop at the end of the rail trail at the old end of the rail trail, LeCount Hollow parking lot, at which point we were originally thinking about continuing on to the rail trail, but we decided to, for simplicity's sake, stay with our route that we've done for the last 19 years, or sorry, 17 rides. And we're going to jump off the rail trail at LeCount and jump onto Route 6 and follow Route 6 into Truro. And so I was asked by Rebecca to jump on and answer any questions you might have. And then I was also informed that the town is now instituting for rides, et cetera, a $500 fee. And we want to just touch base on that also. So before I just want to see if anybody had any questions from the board regarding our ride.
Okay, so from LeCount Hollow, are you going straight to Route 6 at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what we've done for the past rides, is we've jumped onto Route 6 and just ridden Route 6 straight through to Truro.
So I prefer the route that Pam Mast takes, which has less distance on the highway. They go up Ocean View Drive, and then re-enter, I believe, at Lawrence Road. And that keeps them off the highway for an additional stretch. And it's a safer ride for riders.
What with the new extension of the rail trail, 'cause I haven't actually seen it. I'm in Boston. If we were to continue on the rail trail, our problem is it's a one-day ride from Boston to Provincetown for a number of our riders. And at one point we did talk about adding that, but that adds additional mileage to our ride, which we found that people at that point are just ready to get into town. And with Route 6, we also were informed that Route 6 now has bike lanes.
Not yet. So
Okay.
parts of it are, but you're going straight through an area where there's no shoulders on Route 6 and no bike accommodations really.
Okay.
Mike?
I think, Pan Mass Challenge is like pretty popular time for the Cape. This is September 17th to 12 to 5 p.m. I imagine the bicyclists are going to be pretty spread out with 100 bikes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we don't have the kind of traffic that there is during the Pan Mass Challenge. So seeing as a group's done it for years, I'd be okay with them continuing their typical route in September. What day of the week is September 17th?
Saturday.
And I mean, even still, I think, the traffic's way down compared to summertime.
We've in past, we've had up to 300 riders, and we've never had a problem going on Route 6 in that area. And this year, like I said, we're expecting to be down to about 120, I guess, at this point. So, and they will be very spread apart. I've ridden the ride several times and I've crewed it several times. And by the time people get to Wellfleet, they're usually very spread apart.
Okay. Chief Hurley or David, are there any details that are required as part of this?
Are you guys asking me or asking?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm unmuted now. Nope, that's a negative. The ride has always come through every year with no details and no issues.
Okay. Kathleen, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just want to say to David Whitman, thank you for this charity ride you've been doing for 17 years. I've been right with you, watching you go through town, and it's a great thing. So thank you for coming back, and I support the ride.
Thank you.
Okay. So one of the reasons that we have a standardized set of fees is so that the board was basically getting bogged down debating what an appropriate fee was for each event.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, does the board wish to consider any amendments to the fee or just leave it at 500? Because I mean, part of the reason we have that is to avoid this debate. Yeah.
I think, if they're using the rail trail and then using the state highway, I'm not sure how much use town property they have besides the connector from LeCount Hollow Road. So I'm not sure a $500 fee is appropriate in this case.
Yeah, so this is where I don't want to get into a debate because we get hung up in the weeds for extended periods of time when we start debating fees.
Sure.
John?
I agree with you, Ryan. We did that for a reason, and I think we should stick with it.
Okay. So I move to approve the use of, and where are you having your pit stops, David?
We have the one at the end, right at the end of in the count
Okay.
parking lot.
Okay.
And it's manned by about 4 or 5 people, and all we're doing is doing water and package things like power bars, things like that for our riders. And we do have a small medical personnel there just in case.
Okay, so I move to approve the application for the use of town property to Harbor to the Bay Road Race by David Whitman for September 17th, 2022, from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. for a fee of $500.
Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote, please?
John, aye.
Barbara, I.
Michael, but I don't agree with the fee, but just talk for the record.
Ryan, aye.
Kathleen, I.
Okay. All right, so thank you, David.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
you get some more riders.
Thank you. Okay, take care.
Okay, Wellfleet Spat. Maya and is Kate on here as well? Yes. Maya, your audio is not working.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Thank you. Can you please let Matt Frazier in if you can see him in the waiting room?
He's not.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Sure.
I'll be participating in the event, hopefully, so.
Okay, so Maya, why don't you discuss your application to increase the capacity?
So when we made our capacity limit, we were being very conservative. It was a different time for the COVID outlook, not that everything is perfect now. And we had not fully explored our ticketing options, and going back to our planning, we think that this is a completely sound and safe thing to do, and we would like to present it to the select board as such.
Okay, Kathleen, you had some questions regarding this?
Can I quickly add to what Maya said before some questions? Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us here tonight. Sorry, last week got a little jumbled up, but I just wanted to start by reiterating what Maya said and also just giving some numbers so that we can kind of wrap our heads around where this number of 7,000 attendees came from. So Bakersfield is approximately 126,000 square feet, which is where we proposed to host the Oyster Fest this year. We took in all of the square footage considerations, which include all infrastructure, which is our main stage, porta potties, raw bars, loading and staging areas, emergency egress and access. And we had a remaining 86,000 square feet of passable foot traffic, which includes under tents as well that people can walk under, such as the food tent. So with 7,000 tickets, this would include all volunteers, vendors, anyone that's included in the vendor booth, police, fire, safety, security staff, which approximately would be 200-ish people max. So per square foot, the field can handle 7,000 people square footage wise, with all people allotted 4 square foot distance apart, which meets current COVID guidelines and regulations. So that's kind of where that 7,000 number was formulated from. And like Maya said, when we initially planned, we severely undershot the number because of current COVID regulations. And just, as we've gotten more in depth in the planning process, we've figured out some more measurements and factual numbers as well. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, Kathleen.
So hi, I'm Kathleen Bacon, the newest select board member. And I had concerns about this, and I've done some research and homework on it this week. The only people I haven't heard from are Chief Pauly and Chief Hurley, and I will get to them later. But I'm going to read you a statement of why I'm completely against going from 5,000 people to 7,000 people. Let's historically look at the land that you're using. It is filled wetland. And if we have rain that weekend, or if we have rain the weekend before, it's going to revert back to filled wetland. It takes weeks for that field to dry out. But I'm going to read you my statement. I am not in support of the amended increase from 5,000 to 7,000 people. The area to be utilized for the event is environmentally sensitive, prone to flooding when it rains, which could happen during the fest weekend. 15,000 people on this recreational resource for the town is a heavy impact over the course of 2 days. I completely understand the financial needs of the organization after being shut down for the past 2 years due to the pandemic. I get it, I really do. We have all financially been impacted due to COVID. But I asked the SPAT organization to stay with their original number of ticketed Oyster Fest patrons to 5,000 per day. Let's consider the land, the natural resources of Bakersfield, the Mayo Beach area. It's not just the field, it's the beach, the whole area itself, to be just a temporary place to put on a smaller scale Oyster Fest this year. Now, I have heard back from the conservation agent, AKA our health agent, Hillary Greenberg Lemos, and she's not in favor of increasing the number to 7,000. She feels that we should start, we haven't had the fest in 2 years. You came to us with a scaled back version of the fest, not just because of COVID, but because of our staffing situation with fire and police. And you know that this recreational area for our town needs to be like right back spickety span in order the very next day for soccer practice. So why risk having this event go sideways? 5,000 people, 10,000 people in 2 days is still an anxiety for all our department heads and our two chiefs, and certainly the people that run the recreational program. So I would urge my fellow select board members to not amend this to 7,000 people. Let's stay with the scaled back version that came to us back when. I wasn't on the board then. And I'd like to hear from Chief Hurley. How do we get an ambulance in and out of there? I have concerns about safety. It's a bottleneck. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Chief Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, with our discussions with the increased crowd population from 5,000 to 7,000, to be honest, from our staffing standpoint, from both police, fire, and using the private security, it wasn't going to be that much of an effect. One of the things we calculated early on was the ability, if people came to the festival without ticketing, and would we be able to get people in? And with this increase here, it'll be purely a ticketed event with nobody else that would be let in. The other factor too is when we've had the festival uptown during what I call crazy years, the population fluctuates in and out all day. I mean, we do not have at one point 7,000, 5,000, or back then 10 or 15,000 at one point in time. So when we took that into effect from a public safety standpoint, I can't speak to the other concerns that, for us, the difference in numbering wasn't going to make a difference for our staffing.
Okay, Matt Frazier.
Yes.
All right. Maya had asked you to speak to the application as well. So, do you have anything to add to it?
Not particularly, but I'm happy to answer any questions from an infrastructure standpoint.
Okay.
That is just the organization with.
Kate?
Yeah, thank you. If I could just respond briefly to some of Kathleen's points about conservation. Sorry, my camera's going in and out. First of all, I appreciate you bringing that up. That's obviously, SPAT's mission is to preserve, protect, and promote the shell fishing industry, and with that comes the natural environment. So that's not something certainly that was overlooked on our part. We're very aware and cognizant of the fact that Bakersfield is a filled in marsh. So I just want to explain some of the precautionary measures that we're taking to prepare for potentially muddy, conditions. I'm going to turn off my blur really quickly. So something that we have been working with DPW with, and that we have started already proactively doing, is we have ordered a field conditioner in which we plan to work with DPW to potentially put that down to see how the field responds to it. And if we don't end up using it, donating it back to the town. All of our infrastructure and heavy equipment will be drived around the perimeter of the field, and it'll even not even so much as really past the center of the field. So in terms of a heavy load of pressure being down on the field, we've kind of started to mitigate some of those concerns as well. And lastly, too, with our bigger infrastructure pieces, such as the stage, we have already spoken with some of the companies in which they have protocols for doing festivals and implementing their infrastructure on field. So they have some boarding and things like that that will be able to be used if it rains a week prior, or even, that day, and we need to kind of troubleshoot that way. So we've been working and talking with DPW to get on top of some of these problems and some of these concerns to really just figure out how we can make this area best use with 7,000 people. We've talked with security and police, and from that standpoint, we don't feel that it's going to be that much of a burden, following their lead. So just wanted to touch on some of those conservation concerns as well.
Okay, Maya?
Yes, just a little bit more I had a conversation with Hillary today, and I'm very accustomed to working with land that's subject to coastal flooding, subject to storm flowage. And it's unfortunate that Bakersfield is a filled-in marsh, from all perspectives. The land is already degraded. It's not the best use for any marshland, but we know this going into it. And what I explained to Hillary is that if we have a problem on Bakersfield, it's not going to happen in the blink of an eye. We're going to know ahead of time if we need to put down temporary flooring, which will be expensive, but that is what we're willing to do if we have to. And we also have talked about mitigating with native plantings around the area to improve it and leave it better than we found it. DPW has fully supported us along the way in terms of repairing the field afterwards, and we're fully confident that we can leave it the way it needs to be left.
Okay, Barbara?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a clarification through the chair, perhaps to Mr. Waldo. There's a sheet in the packet that has sign-offs from different departments, including health department. Is that from the application for 5,000 people rather than the most recent request? Is that correct? Okay.
I can't speak definitively towards it.
Okay.
I am unmuted, but I believe it is actually an updated response based on Select Board Member Bacon's request to hear from Health and Conservation.
Okay.
My understanding from Hillary today was she's always cautious. She
Okay.
wants to be cautious, and she's always going to side on the cautionary side of less people for COVID reasons. She did articulate that maybe it might be something that we need to monitor a little bit more as the summer goes on and summer progresses, on whether COVID is still an issue. But my sense to her from her was, she would prefer to see less people. If the board goes with 7,000, I think she would be okay with it. It's just her preference will always be to the more cautionary side of the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that, because when I see the sheet that has department sign-offs, I guess, to me that says they've signed off on it. So I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something, based on the comments that my colleague Kathleen made. So did she suggest that there were additional, again, through the chair, additional conditions? Did Hillary suggest additional conditions that she wanted to see?
To me, Hillary suggested mitigation with native plantings and cautionary approach with field hardness and temporary flooring to prevent damage before it starts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Matt Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of points. Most familiar with the gated access that you drive out from Kendrick Avenue. And we know that as a hardened gravel surface. And that is true right through the grass all the way to the shed that is out on the far right that backs up to the cat nine tails. Sort of similar to a warning track, the hardened surface around a professional baseball field. That is the access where the portable stage will be brought in by truck. That is the access where a garbage truck and a small recycling truck would be staged during the event and then dumped out, hauled out on usually Sunday morning. And similar to that, there's another stretch of hardened surface that protrudes over towards the old Costa Motel, Billingsgate Motel, Billingsgate condominiums now. And that's where the large group in a straight row of portable toilets are proposed to go on that hardened surface, so that that portable restroom truck early on Sunday morning has an access on a hardened surface, not just simply driving across a baseball field. The other point I wanted to make was a little snapshot of history. I was born and raised in Wellfleet, and there's been many, many events with large equipment on that field. There's been dozens of carnivals over the years, dating back since I was a kid. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, that area has been filled in for some 60 or 70 years. The hydraulic pressure that it's seen from simply the rain alone over the years and the natural compaction, it's pretty darn hard out there. I've walked the field recently on several occasions with Lisa Brown and other representatives of SPAT. And, history has proven that SPAT and the Oyster Fest has always left the Main Street District in better shape than we found it. I think that's been proven. Thank you for your time.
Okay. So I think a lot of these issues would have been avoided if it had been in the center of town to begin with. You have a hard surface, parking lots, pavement. But yeah. Kathleen?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Hurley. Can you give me some idea of how we get an ambulance in and out of there? What's the route?
I have not consulted with the fire chief where he'll be staging his equipment yet. We haven't done the actual field visits for logistics. I'm not sure if Matt or Kate have that information.
Yep, Kate.
Yeah, so for the ambulance, it'll be parked right outside in the parking lot next to the rec building. And then on top of that, the exit will be in between the skate park and the tennis courts. So there will be positioned right next to the tennis court a med tent and medical personnel there as well. So that'll be the exit. For the entrance, it'll start roughly, we're still determining where exactly the admissions will go, but it'll kind of filtrate in through that hard packed road that Matt Frazier was just mentioning as well. So in terms of the ambulance getting in and out, we will be leaving that road fully clear, as well as on the other side where Billingsgate Motel is, I think that's correct. There will be a access road for vehicles to get in and out too. So there will be full access roads over along the perimeter.
Okay, Matt Frazier.
Kate basically answered the question, Mr. Chair, that I was going to offer a little bit more input, just the dedicated EMS area. And there will be hundreds of feet of non-driven temporary fencing that sits in metal T-stands, just like we would be fencing in the perimeter of Town Hall parking lot, and lots of 4 foot tall pedestrian barriers for pedestrian flow and control, one way in, one way out. Nice steady flow.
Okay, Kate.
I also just wanted to quickly add that the number of 7,000 is less than half of the number that we typically have done on a day of the fest. So we feel fully prepared to control this size of crowd, especially in a larger area, given that Bakersfield is square footage wise larger than the Main Street footprint as well.
Okay, Rich. Sorry, you're muted.
Thank you. I did speak with the fire chief, who's unable to make it tonight, and he did share that he has no concern with this request. I think it's similar to Chief Hurley, which was the system that they're going to have in place for them to handle this additional increase. It's not going to be an object for them. So he did weigh in.
Okay, so I move to amend the use of town property filed by Wellfleet Spat, raising the capacity limit from 5,000 people to 7,000 people per day, and to return the grounds back to their original state to the satisfaction of the Wellfleet DPW Director, Wellfleet Health and Conservation Agent, and the Wellfleet Rec Director. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Can I have a roll call vote?
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Ryan, I.
Definitely no.
Okay, motion carries 3-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mike, you can come back. Jack's Boat Rental, Mike Schiller. I don't see him. Okay, if one of the phone numbers that's joined raises their hand, that'd be helpful if you're Kathleen.
Yeah, is Mike here? Is Mr. Schiller here?
I don't see him.
Well, I move that we should probably continue this because Gull Pond is, we've stopped all drop-offs of watercraft at Gull Pond.
Yep.
It's just used by the Audubon, Cape Cod National Seashore. So he's got Gull Pond here for a drop-off. And I'd also like to see Powers Landing taken out of this because there's a lot of action at Powers Landing as it is with our shell fishermen and the kayak rack down there that's full to capacity. So I'd like to see no more drop-offs down there. So maybe, Mr. Chair, I'd suggest we continue this and bring Mike in for a conversation. He's the new owner of this business.
Yes, I'm also not sure if he's aware of the fees that are associated with this, which is $385 per landing. So, you know, it's, yeah. So I move to continue the use of town property request for Mike Schiller for Jack's Boat Rental, I guess to July 19th, 2022.
Second,
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Michael, aye.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
And Rich, can you let him know? So, okay. Route 6 Main Street, Jay Norton and Jill McLaughlin. So thank you for sticking out an hour to get to you. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is going to be an update on the Route 6 Main Street intersection project. We have developed and submitted the 100% design plans for the project, and Jill McLaughlin from Stantec is here to give you an update.
Okay. Jill, did you want to have a presentation or?
Yep, I have just a quick presentation prepared for everyone.
Let's see. How do you do that?
Yeah, I might be able to. Let me try, see if it'll work.
Yeah, that's working.
Okay, perfect. I'll just throw it in presentation mode for everyone. If it lets me do that. Okay, good. All right, so good evening, everyone. As Ryan had announced, I'm here to do a quick, and Jay announced, I'm here to do a quick presentation on the Route 6 and Main Street project and where we stand. My name is Jill McLaughlin, and I'm the design project manager for the project. And this really is just a super quick presentation to highlight what has changed with the design since we last met in August and October of 2021. So in August of 2021, we met and presented alternatives for the Route 6 cross-section, really specific to how we were accommodating bicyclists and pedestrians along the corridor. And at that select board meeting, the alternative that provided a 6.5 foot wide sidewalk on the east side of Route 6 was chosen. So just a kind of quick recap on pedestrian and bike accommodations for the selected alternatives. South of Main Street, we have a 5 foot sidewalk on the west side, 6.5 foot sidewalk on the east side. North of Main Street, we continue just the 6.5 foot wide sidewalk. And through both sections, we have buffered bike lanes. So that's a 5 foot shoulder in road with a 2 foot striped buffer. So at the August 2021 select board meeting, we presented a few alternatives. This was the alternative that was chosen. The difference between the alternative that was viewed at that select board meeting and what we ended on with the design is the width of the grass strip between the sidewalk, the 6.5 foot sidewalk on the east side of Route 6 and the roadway. So previously we had shown a wider grass strip in the event that the town would ever want to widen out that sidewalk. But at that meeting, that wider grass strip was discussed, and it was determined that the town did not want that additional width for the grass strip. So we've removed that and tightened up the cross section along Route 6. That does not preclude the ability to widen the sidewalk if we ever need to in the future, or the town ever wants to in the future. The widening can still take place at the back of sidewalk if needed. This cross section too was also presented at the 25% design public hearing. So it may look familiar to folks from that, but it has changed from that August Board of Selectmen's meeting. And then for Main Street, if you remember, our 25% design submission had shown or proposed 5 foot bike lanes in road along Main Street. And so in October of 2021, we attended the select board meeting and reviewed a few different alternatives for the cross section for Main Street, and selected the cross section shown that provides a 2 foot shoulder and 11 foot travel lane in road, which essentially creates a share the road experience for bicyclists and vehicles, which is very similar to how it operates today. So this cross-section provides us with a narrower width, which helps us to reduce impacts along the corridor. It maintains the share the road experience that is very much like the existing condition that's out there today and continues through Wellfleet Center. So that is the quick update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments.
Sure. So I have one.
Sure.
There is the stormwater treatment really hasn't changed. It still includes a straight pipe discharge into Duck Creek at 2 locations, I believe. And they should really be infiltration of some sort rather than a straight pipe discharge. I mean, later on in our agenda tonight, there is actually from the DPW as part of NRCHS award to upgrade some of the stormwater treatment on town roads and areas. The previous meeting, we had a meeting with the Herring River to go over, the Herring River Restoration Project, to go over their design for the bridge going over Chequesset, or going over the Herring River on Chequesset Road. And they were also using infiltration plus bioremediation for their stormwater treatment. Having a straight pipe discharge also increases the risk of contamination by fuel onto the highway, of that entering the Duck Creek, which could have a pretty severe impact. So I really think that there needs to be a better stormwater system installed in this location.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for our stormwater design, currently we are replacing the existing catch basins with deep sump catch basins, which helps get us some treatment for the suspended solids. And we do also have infiltration galleys that are proposed. So we have a few along Route 6 and then one along Main Street that we're proposing to install to also get additional treatment.
Sure. So the design documents that were included has a straight pipe discharge into Hawes Pond for the area that is basically the entire length north of Hawes Pond into about where the fire station is, which is where the gradient changes to go in the opposite direction. Has that changed?
We should, so the way the system works, it's a little confusing the way it's shown on plans. So we have like the main trunk line that runs down Route 6 in that area, and at sections along that stretch, we divert the flow into a couple of leaching galleys that are on the east side of Route 6. So the stormwater would run into those leaching galleys. If those leaching galleys ever reach capacity, then it goes back into the system and then outlets. So a lot of the stormwater from the drainage system is going to infiltrate and be treated through those leaching galleys, and then whatever's additional capacity or after it's been treated and backflowed through the system would then go to Hawes Pond. And then we also have the deep sump catch basins proposed in that area too, to help get us additional treatment. So we did look at potentially putting a stormwater basin in that area, but there are private wells and we weren't able to fit the stormwater basin in and meet the setback requirements, which is why we ended with the leaching galleys.
Okay, so there wasn't room to put in like a swale?
Not from a grading perspective. I think we'd run out of room because a lot of the drainage pipes are about 5 feet below grade. So you would have to carry that out to the side and essentially create a big ditch that's going to run along all those properties in that area.
Okay, or what about a larger infiltration chamber?
We could potentially, if that's something that the town wants us to do, we could look to add additional galleys to the system. But we are, I'm not a drainage designer, so I can't speak specifics to the numbers, but we did use the DEP stormwater regulation guidelines to design and come up with what we currently have for our design.
Okay. John?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Since we got onto the drainage issue, is there any way to estimate what the capacity would be of the treatment catchments that you're proposing in terms of, say, I don't know, a rainstorm of perhaps an inch total? Would that exceed its capacity, or is there any way to measure that, or any way to provide information on that?
Yep, I could certainly get you information on that. So one of the things that we do through the design process is, and we'll include this when we submit a notice of intent for the project, is we prepare a stormwater report, and that stormwater report gets into all the specifics of the analysis and what it treats and the expectations for how it's going to function.
Okay, and the other sort of comment / question is, I'm glad to see the modification that Main Street is only going to be widened by a foot. One of my concerns has been, and I've expressed it before, the properties along Main Street there, particularly the Piping Plover, which put a great deal of money into their property improvements. I was concerned about the impact it would have on that. Which side of the road would the widening take place on? The wetland side or the property side?
A little bit of both sides. We tried to thread the needle, so to speak, and minimize impacts to both sides as much as we could.
All right, thank you, and thanks for the hard work involved in trying to accommodate that.
Thank you.
Okay, Jay Norton.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to elaborate a little more on the stormwater design, and Jill, please, chime in if I'm saying anything incorrectly, but typically, like, Jill said, these systems are designed per the guidelines of Mass DEP stormwater regulations, and they need to meet certain specifications to treat the first inch of rainfall, which means that that first inch needs to be treated with some form of deep sump catch basin or an oil grit separator. If usually the rule of thumb for DEP guidelines is to design the system for the 25-year storm event. We've seen storms that have exceeded those. They can get up to a 100-year storm event, but there's no way you can design a drainage system to accommodate a 100-year storm. It would just be so massive and just exorbitantly expensive to try and infiltrate everything from a stormwater event. So typically with a roadway design, you have to have some form of relief in the form of an outfall, or else you'll encounter major flooding, which obviously would be a hazard to any type of roadway infrastructure. So I just wanted to shed some light on that, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just, my only concern is to make sure that it's adequate to what we receive. I totally understand that. Yeah, an extremely strong storm, there needs to be outflow, planned outflow rather than unplanned. Are you looking for a motion from the board tonight? For at least for the 100% design?
I don't know, Jay, if you could answer that.
Jay's muted.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. I was trying to unmute myself.
Sure.
This is just for a project update to inform the board of where we're at with the project. We are, this has already been submitted to MassDOT. We are now in the process of getting into the appraisal process for Main Street. So this is basically an informative session for the board.
Okay, Mike.
How far out are we looking for construction? Do we
So
know?
it's currently scheduled for the 2023 tip. So we're anticipating at the latest end of June 2023, it would be advertised, which means construction could start fall, but more definitely spring of 2024. So either fall of 2023 or spring of 2024. That exact start date just depends on how long it takes the contract documents to be processed and the contractor to get notice to proceed for construction of the project.
Okay, I was just making sure that the state recognizes the flow of traffic here in the summertime. So.
Yes, yes. So they do have a moratorium. The contractor will not be allowed to do anything that's going to impact traffic in the summer months. So quite typically for Cape projects, construction shuts down for the summer.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, awesome. And so is there any other questions or comments for Jill or Jay regarding the design? Okay, seeing none. So MassDOT, a request for a right of entry. So I'm pretty sure this is subject to the Cemetery Commission's approval, but I want to just cover it in case they need both. I thought that was the prudent way to go forward. And it has to do with some of the work related to the alignment of Cahoon Hollow Road for, yeah. Mike?
No, I don't have my hand up anymore.
Okay.
But I'll make
Barbara?
a question if you want.
Yep.
Yeah, just a couple questions. Is this work imminent or is this in the future relating to the other improvements?
Rich, how about you speak to this?
I'll speak to it and ask Jay and Jill to just confirm certain things. My understanding here was originally we were voting to submit the 100% design, but thankfully it seems like that process has already passed and we actually have the 100% design submission. Seems like we have funding sourced through the TIP program for this project. So barring no issues with TIP and MassDOT's final review, the 100%, this project's imminent. I don't see any other way of looking at it.
Okay, so what we're approving is the right of entry request, but for something that will take place in conjunction with the project in the future. But we need to do this now in order to move on so that everyone can move on to the next phase. Is that correct?
You don't have to do it now. I mean, ideally we do it now. This is a process that's going to take some time. I think Jay had mentioned they're going through the appraisal process now. There's going to be a lot of public notices that will be going out similar to this to public properties that will be impacted, whether it be temporary easements or permanent easements.
Okay.
And they're going to be requesting the same thing. This is just one that came into us first charge, and we thought we'd put it on the docket, see if we can move through.
Okay.
It's relatively minor of a loam and seed temporary easement.
Okay. I mean, through the,
Sorry, Jay?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to piggyback with what Rich said. This is part of the right-of-way appraisal process.
Okay.
It's just a procedural measure that MassDOT's taking with properties along Route 6. So.
Okay. Thank you. It's not that I question it's the merits. I'm just wanted to know what we were approving. So I appreciate the explanation from Mr. Waldo and from Mr. Norton. Thank you.
No problem.
Mike?
I move to approve Mass DOT's right of entry request relative to the Route 6 Main Street project, subject to approval of the Wellfleet Cemetery Commission for any parcels under their care.
Okay, second. Okay. Can I have a roll call vote?
John, aye.
Barbara, aye.
Michael, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. So thank you, Jill.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Have a good night. Unfortunately, we're not done with you, Jay. So,
So we
Okay.
don't have to vote to submit the 100% design.
no.
No.
Okay.
Okay, Jay, the NRCS grant.
Okay. So, exciting news. The town of Wellfleet is receiving some more grant funding. A little bit of a background on this, between myself, Nancy Chavetta, Shellfish Constable, and Hillary Lemos, the Health and Conservation Agent. We've been having multiple meetings with NRCS, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and they're part of the United States Department of Agriculture from a federal perspective. And we've been meeting with them for, I don't know, probably over the course of 2 years now, trying to identify projects in town that would be eligible for grant funding to really protect shellfishing areas from any type of illicit discharges from stormwater. So we were awarded 3 projects in town. One is Powers Landing. The other one is Kendrick Avenue, which is Keller's Corner. And the third is Lieutenant Island Road, which obviously it's a major project there. It's been, the road's tired. We've been trying to drum up funding to fix the road and the drainage. So this will certainly help with that progress. So what the board has in front of them tonight are 3 requests to allow the town to enter into grant agreements with the NRCS program. And I failed to mention that Steve Spear, who's been instrumental in this process, as well as Don Liptak from the Cape Cod Conservation District, and Steve Spear is with the NRCS. So they're also instrumental in the Herring River project, and I wanted to mention their names. But Mr. Chair, would you like me to just go through each location, describe the projects, and then how would you like me to proceed?
Yes, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So in your packet, and unfortunately the way it was printed, the first Powers Landing agreement actually is not in there, but I believe, Mr. Chair, you emailed that to the board. So they have those documents in front of them.
Yes, I did.
Okay, great. So for Powers Landing, the town is receiving $375,000 in grant funding, which includes $45,000 for engineering design, $30,000 for project administration costs, which would be bid solicitation, just overall project management of the whole project. And with that particular project, there has to be a 25% match, which comes out to $75,000, which we can seek Chapter 90 funding for that. So we don't have to use any town appropriations for that funding source. The project entails stormwater improvements to Powers Landing to prevent any illicit discharges into the shellfishing areas that are used there. So there'll be a substantial improvement to the parking area and drainage that currently exists. So that's the first award. The second is Kendrick Avenue, which is at Keller's Corner, which is an ongoing erosion problem. We're constantly adding sand there to protect the roadway. There's some runoff issues that obviously occur. So as part of this project, we will have funding to implement a stormwater drainage system there. And we're hoping to also include some form of erosion control to protect the infrastructure that will be constructed there. And with that project, we are looking at technical technical assistance funding only, which is in the form of $54,000, which requires no town match. So that is strictly fully grant funded, which will bring the project to engineering design and construction plans ready. The following fiscal year, we will seek funding for construction on that. But for now, we're in somewhat of the infant stages of the project. So at least we'll have some money to get some construction plans and design going. And lastly is Lieutenant Island Road, which is a major project. Like I said, the project is about a mile long from Route 6 to Catboat Road. However, this particular grant funding is only subject to stormwater improvements that are subject to any illicit discharges. So we've come up with a plan to include the grant funding for this particular project, and NRCS is willing to give us $2,035,000 for this project. So that includes $185,000 for project administrative costs. We already have a consultant on board. We're close to a 75% design for that. And with that, there is a town match with this project of 25%, which will total $462,500, which again can be used from Chapter 90 funding. We have the balances to utilize those funds. So there won't be any town appropriations for that project as well. It's a major accomplishment to receive those grant funds. And we're really excited, and we hope the board allows us to accept those funds.
I have a quick question. So Powers Landing, the parking lot there is sand. How is the stormwater going to be treated there?
It's paved.
Oh.
Yeah, it looks like sand sometimes because it's blown in,
But it
but
is paved.
it's mostly paved.
It's mostly paved. Okay.
Yep.
And would there be like a lip by the landing?
I can't speak to the specifics yet on that project because we have no design. We really haven't fully, investigated what we're going to do there. But there will obviously be time to review the plans, bring forward the plans to the board for comment.
Okay, Kathleen?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Through you to Mr. Norton. Jay, this is just, it's beyond awesome. It really is. It's just phenomenal. And I so appreciate the work and effort you and everyone have put into this. It's 5-star. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bacon.
I would also second that, and also thank Hillary Greenberg, Health Conservation Agent, and Nancy Savetta, the Shellfish Constable, for all the hard work that they put into this. Yeah, it's great. So there actually needs to be 2 motions tonight. So the first is I move to authorize the DPW Director, Jay Norton, to request the use of $537,500 from Chapter 90 funding to use as the town's match to the USDA NRCS grant award.
Michael,
Second,
Okay, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
Barbara, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, and I move to accept the grant awards from USDA NRCS.
Second. John, second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
John, aye.
Barbara, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay. Both motions carry 5-0. All right. We are.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
We are on policy on the use of public buildings. Mr. Wolf?
Yes, this issue came up during our previous election season, in the course of which a room at the senior center was used on a couple of occasions for candidate meet and greets. And I believe it was the second time that happened, there was some controversy surrounding that as to whether this was a legitimate use of town-owned building, for a political purpose, so to speak. And it became evident, so instruction was issued subsequent to that, but it became apparent that we really don't have a policy, and that this is something that the select board should create, a policy regarding that type of use. And it's been suggested that it should not be allowed for any kind of political purpose. And for instance, the town of Orleans was cited as an example, but that's really not, I don't think, a very, in fact, the Ethics Commission indicated that Orleans Town Council ought to take a second look at their policy. My feeling is that when we have a local election, one of the things we don't have here that a lot of areas off Cape do are things like banquet facilities and spaces that can be used for purposes like that. And besides, those kinds of facilities cost money. And when we have people running in local elections, it's really not a high dollar operation. And in researching this, it's come out, and I'm going to refer you to this should be in your packet. Let me find it here. Oh, here it is. Interpretive bulletin from the Office of Campaign and Political Finance. The pertinent sections have been highlighted. Now, ordinarily, they're saying that in general, that public buildings should not be used for overtly political purposes, but it does state clearly, in my view, that notwithstanding the Anderson prohibition, which is referring to the previous references to political uses, such as fundraising. Fundraising is not an allowed use. There are limited circumstances in which groups supporting or opposing a ballot question may use public resources. In its decision, the court stated that the city's use of publicly funded facilities would be improper, at least unless each side were given equal representation and access, and that's the key here. Equal access means that a group supporting or opposing a ballot question, such as a registered ballot question committee, may be allowed to use a room or other space in a public building for a meeting, as long as a group on the opposing side is given the opportunity on request to have a similar meeting on the same terms and conditions. Equal access, it goes on to state, if provided, does not mean that proponents or opponents must be invited to attend a particular event or be asked or permitted to speak at an event. For example, an opponent of a ballot question who demands an opportunity to speak at a meeting of the committee supporting the question is not entitled to such an opportunity under the equal access rule. The content and agenda of the meeting is set and controlled by the group using the space. Now it says also a municipality may choose, however, to not allow any access to a meeting space by political committees. Such a policy does not violate the campaign finance law as long as it is evenly applied to all groups. In other words, equal access may mean no access by political groups. I submit that the democratic process in a town like Wellfleet is furthered, not hindered, when we allow our buildings that we all pay for to be used in this fashion, instead of requiring people to put up money to use outside facilities. And therefore, the proposal I made, if I can find it, basically follows the rules for the use of the COA. And I would like to point out too, this does not have to be limited to the COA. The COA seems to be the venue of choice for these sorts of things. I noticed that included in the packet were references to the candidate forums, including the situation in which I had not been initially invited to one when I was running. That's a separate issue as far as I'm concerned. When someone puts on a candidate forum, the implication is it is for all the candidates. We're not talking about a candidate forum here. We're talking about a meet and greet, especially to introduce people who are new to the election process here, and as was the case this time around. So basically, the proposal is to allow this use, provided, as stated earlier, that that equal opportunity is provided to all who are running who are running for office here in town, and following the rules that normally apply to the use of our public buildings, such as the scheduling protocols. The senior center has a hierarchy. It is the senior center, so those types of uses take precedence, and that the facilities are left in the condition that they were found in, and that, for instance, the use of the kitchen is not allowed, and so on and so forth. So that's what I've got.
Okay. Kathleen, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Wolf. So John, are you saying that we could have debates and, you know, we could be politicking in town hall in the basement? This is all buildings?
Well, the thrust of this was the senior center because that's where this happened.
But in the desired action here, it says the policy on the use of public buildings.
Yes, I don't see why it couldn't apply to any public building that Wellfleet has and has appropriate spaces for a meeting.
Well, I'm kind of old school, and it's always been a Massachusetts kind of state law that you know, there was no politicking within a town building. You heard it from our town moderator at town meeting. We were not allowed to wear buttons or any political signs were to be allowed in the area for town meeting. And when we go to vote, all buttons or political things need to be removed. So, I mean, this is a little, you know, I mean, I'm going off a little bit here, but I appreciate the effort. The forum was always done at candidates night at the senior center. I've been to, I think, every one that they've had, and there's never been a problem, so.
Mr. Chair, may I reply?
A minute, one second. So, so there's a different rules for when polling is actually being conducted. It has to be within, you're not allowed to have certain things take place within a certain distance of a polling location.
Yes.
And that's different than having an event that is political in nature. And and those rules extend to town meeting as well, I believe, or to the moderator's discretion. I forget which. But that's done separately. The reason for that is that you don't, if there's no restriction on distance from a polling location, you could actually have, you know, campaigners on a particular question. You know, the goal is to allow people to vote without pressure. That is the intent there. In terms of, I would just say that there is, so with equal access, there was just a ruling by the Supreme Court about 2 months ago regarding the city of Boston, where they were allowing groups to raise flags on the city flagpole. And the Supreme Court ruled that they had to allow any, you know, under equal access, that they had to allow any group, if they allowed any group to you know, basically fly a flag on it, that they had to allow any other group to fly a flag. There is a concern here where, so there is a, where it's political, where is it? So where is it? The political in nature. That also would extend to if we didn't allow, you know, under equal access, if we didn't allow one item that was political in nature, we wouldn't be able to allow any item in political in nature. And that would extend to the Wellfleet Forum and, you know, some of the other advocacy groups within town as well. I think there's been ones where, you know, for instance, and this was pre-COVID, there was a number of different meetings, you know, associated with the Herring River, associated with the ponds. You know, those could be seen as being political in nature as well, because they're advocacy of some sort of nature. But I'll just leave it at that. John?
Yeah, well, I was going to reiterate that this is in no way, it has nothing at all to do with political activities at an actual election, which has always been forbidden. This is strictly leading up to an election, presenting candidates or allowing them to present themselves. And they're two different issues entirely.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, I guess this really comes down to the spirit of like Wellfleet's elections being nonpartisan, and nonpartisan doesn't necessarily mean a political party. It could be anything. Suppose, you know, someone decides, you know, hey, you know, we heard John Wolfe is a libertarian, maybe he is, maybe isn't, doesn't really matter. Let's try and get him out of office, and we'll have a quote unquote meet and greet night, which will essentially be a forum, a candidate forum. That I would consider that a partisan event. And do we want staff making those determinations about what's partisan, where we can have these things? And just because something's allowed under campaign finance doesn't mean that that's something we want to allow in the town of Wellfleet. There's a lot of things that are allowed under campaign finance that I would call possibly unscrupulous activity, you know? And, you know, does this open the door for people to have, like Nazi
Yeah.
type things or anything like that. I mean, I much prefer the draft that Suzanne submitted, because this is a taxpayer paid for building. So we have to sort of look at this as like, what's in the best interest of all taxpayers? And do we want these sort of arguments or infighting sort of going on in our public buildings? So in the draft Suzanne Thomas submitted, the language is, it must not involve political solicitation for any candidate, ballot question, or political party, except when an open public forum is held at the adult community center with equal access given to all candidates and viewpoints. And I just don't see what the problem is there. And this isn't just for me. I was invited to that particular event that was on there, which was very much a candidate forum. You know, that's what it was. And I know, you know, a bit of hypocrisy in that one of the people hosting that event also wrote that email stating that Democratic Committee should allow John to be at their meeting, even though that was a private meeting held on private property. So I just think that that was clearly a partisan, you know, situation. It was also circulated with a ballot on, you know, instructing people to not vote for me as a particular candidate. And this isn't about me. I really don't care. And I didn't care for the way that it went, but also aggravated a lot of people. I got several phone calls and Suzanne did also. And do we want to put staff in that situation? Why not just invite everyone? I mean, what harm does that do if all viewpoints are expressed in a public taxpayer funded building? So I would gladly support the draft that Suzanne submitted, but I see a lot of problems with the language and the potential for conflict that could arise through the language that John submitted. And we do have some places like the Pond Hill School, there's the Elks Club, there's Preservation Hall. Those are all private places. So it's not that these events shouldn't happen, but
Sonic Lodge,
private property.
Yeah. John and then Barbara.
Well, first of all, Preservation Hall is owned by the town. That
It's leased by a private business, a private nonprofit.
Yeah, well, anyway, back to your, through you, Ryan, to Mike. There's a certain amount of conflict that is inherent in the democratic process. There's nothing neat and tidy about it.
I agree.
Or should there be? In terms of an outright prohibition on such activities, I think Ryan's point is valid, that would exclude candidate forums as well, taking place in town buildings. I see nothing to be gained by prohibiting it. Yes, you're correct. Probably Pond Hill School would be a venue that could be used. I don't know about the Elks Club. That's a private club. That would, I suppose, be up to them. As far as the partisanship aspect, the partisanship usually does refer to political parties. Yes, certain elections do arouse passions, and I know that the last one or two certainly did. That's something that's part of the process, and I just don't see any reason to keep it under wraps. And as far as extremist groups, I think that's pretty far-fetched that we could expect neo-Nazis to request to use a town building to have a meeting. I'm talking about town elections, candidates. I was pretty specific about that. And I don't expect we're going to have a member of the American Nazi Party running for the select board anytime soon.
Okay. Barbara?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. You know, so, you know, there's certainly a discussion to be had about what sort of events we want or don't want in town halls or town buildings, but whatever policy we adopt has to be consistent with the guidance, you know, provided that's been included in the packet. And so if I understand correctly, if I understand the guidance correctly, if the town is going to allow any groups to use the space, you know, on a politically related topic, whether it's a warrant article, you know, an election, allowing equal access doesn't mean requiring that whatever group uses the space has to include all points of view or all candidates. I mean, the guidance says equal access means you have to provide equal opportunity for other groups, and by extension, other candidates to use the facility. So my concern is that whatever policy we adopt, that it's consistent with the guidance. Thank you.
Okay, Suzanne, and then I actually have a motion. So, or I have a comment and then a motion probably. So Suzanne, sorry.
Yes, thank you. A couple of things. I had crafted this policy prior to the event that happened the Thursday before a Monday election. And then included language about political events based on my conversation with Carolyn Murray from KP Law. Because when I spoke to her 24 hours before the event, she said that it was best if I contacted the organizers of the event and told them they needed to include everybody because of the time constraints. That would not be an opportunity for anybody else to have an equal event on a Thursday, on 3 days, in the 3 days before the election the following Monday. The other, and that's beside the point right now, my biggest concern is this is a town building policy framed as a use policy for my building. And I would recommend that the board discuss and come to a conclusion on this and have it be a standalone policy that can be included in the building use policies crafted by me at the Adult Community Center or Jennifer at the library, so that it's part and parcel of a specific building use policy that conforms with what the select board has decided. I think that sort of jury rigging a policy for my building to apply to other buildings is inappropriate and not particularly useful. Thank you.
So where I am right now is I want to see town council's opinions and comments on the policies. I think that is the way to resolve any of the outstanding questions or issues if we can actually get an opinion. You know, they go through and they do, you know, basically paragraph by paragraph comments. So I think that would be the best path forward in terms of having an understanding of how we should proceed. I also do, I do think that we need to treat different buildings differently as well. So I would, I mean, right now I would move to refer both of the draft policies to town council for comment.
Second that.
Okay, John?
I think that's a fine idea, and I would only ask that the highlighted portions of that interpretive bulletin from the Office of Campaign and Political Finance be included in what you submit to town council.
Sure. Okay, so kind of a roll call vote?
Seconded?
Yeah, seconded.
Yep.
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. We are draft code of conduct. So this is a code of conduct I drafted, I forget when, it says January 4th was when I first brought it forward. It's gone out for comment to town staff and boards and committees. The comments are included, and the sorry, Wellfleet employees. Yeah, which union? Man, I don't want to say the union name wrong. It's the town hall employees, essentially.
Municipal employees union?
Yeah. They requested us to adopt this policy, I believe 2 weeks ago. So, however, there is a question from that I think similar to the previous policy that we should refer it to town council at this point for comment. The enforcement mechanism is the same as is used in Provincetown, which has the same which KP law has ruled on, which is that it was acceptable. But I think the policy as a whole would be best if it would be referred to town council as well. So is the board agreeable to that, or do you wish to discuss the policy tonight?
I'm just trying to scroll down.
Barbara? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are, if we refer it to council, I mean, there are a number of models out there for code of conduct, and there are some that have been, you know, approved, that have been promulgated by the Mass Municipal Association. So if we could kind of widen the scope a bit, just to see what else might be available, you know, that would suit us. Just a suggestion.
Okay. John?
Probably forgot to put my hand down.
Okay. Kathleen?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with Barbara. I have the Massachusetts Municipal Association handbook for selectmen here, and I've co-referenced the code of conduct that I have in my packet to what they suggest in the handbook, and they're pretty close. But my concern, I believe at this point with this, and I agree that it should go to KP Law. What is the enforcement mechanism? Are we looking to be able to recall a sitting board member or remove a sitting board member? And how would that proceed?
Sure.
I don't believe our charter has a recall. Yeah.
So Provincetown has the same, essentially the same for that component where the charter does not include a recall or a provision that allows the select board to remove a sitting board member. However, as part of this policy, they are required to sign. And it would be a condition of their appointment. And that creates the enforcement mechanism that they agree to the code of conduct. The original draft of this, I think, did come from the Mass Municipal Association. And then just most of it, I believe, just had to do to update the language to reflect, you know, our charter. I believe, you know, what the names are, but there might have been a few other small changes as well. But Mike?
I actually think this should go along with the charter change, because I think, you know, asking, like, basically creating a code of conduct where someone agrees to it and then agrees to resign. If they don't agree that they violated the code of conduct, Like, what's the enforcement for the resignation?
So
There's no
the
program.
enforcement mechanism is that the select board, similar to, so they're special municipal employees. So
Okay.
similar to when there's an issue with a special municipal employee, there would be a hearing. It would be the option of the special municipal employee um, to either hold the hearing in executive session or an open session. At that hearing, you know, if they've agreed to the code of conduct and they are found to be in violation of it, the select board can just determine what is the best path forward and what is the will of the board as if they've agreed to the code of conduct, they are bound to it. So, and that's the enforcement mechanism that is employed with province towns that was just adopted last summer.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just think it would be cleaner if it was part of a change in the charter where the select board could vote to actually, because in the end, they're still sort of, are we voting to hold them in violation and then they have to resign? That's actually an act of the person.
No, they are, well, they can choose to resign, but the board can choose to remove somebody who is found to be in violation.
Just based on this enforcement mechanism, we don't need any other legalities behind it.
Yes.
But do you think that it would just be cleaner if we were to also amend? I'm not saying we should.
I think a charter change will take a while.
Yeah, I'm not saying we need to do that in conjunction or at the same time or before, but in the future, I think, you know, we should probably codify it in the charter.
Yeah, you don't want a code of conduct to be in a charter either.
That's not really what I was talking about. I was talking about a mechanism to remove.
Yeah,
That's all.
but so at this point, I move to refer the code of conduct to town council.
On second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Aye.
Barbara, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Motion carries 5-0. Remote participation policy. Rich?
Good evening. So I put this on the agenda tonight because the governor's executive orders regarding the provision of the open meeting law as it relates to holding remote meetings is set to expire on July 15th, which is 3 days from now. Currently, I believe the House has proposed an amendment to extend these provisions until May of 2023, or June of 2023. I'm not sure exactly what it is. And there was some doubt that the modification would land on the governor's desk before July 15th and be executed. So I had council take the opportunity to review our remote participation policy that you guys had in place and to offer some amendments, suggested amendments based on you know, what will happen when we actually revert to chapter 940 or 940 CMR, when we actually revert and the executive orders are removed. So in the packet, you'll see the list of recommendations. Most of them are minor in nature, just kind of definitions, changing some punctuation, stuff like that. But there are, you know, one critical aspect that the board should consider when these COVID rules expire is whether or not the town would actually allow remote participation from the general public. When the COVID rules expire, as does the allowance to allow remote participation for the public. And you'll see in the document, the town council had pointed that out. And pretty much at this point, I'm just open to any comments or suggestions you might have.
Sure. So I actually got a ruling from the Division of Open Government, and town council later changed their opinion. So the opinion where it says once COVID rules expire, the public will not be able to participate remotely is incorrect. It is at the determination of the board about whether or not to allow the public to participate remotely. How public comments are received, I can actually read the entirety of the opinion. Let's see. And I did forward it to the entirety of the board as well. It says the open meeting law does not require that public board bodies allow public comment or public participation during meetings. On the contrary, the open meeting law specifies that nobody shall address the public body without the permission of the chair. However, the Attorney General encourages public bodies to allow public comment and public participation when feasible. Because the open meeting law does not require that public bodies allow for public comment or public participation during meetings at all, the manner that public bodies may choose to accept comment or questions is outside the scope of the open meeting law. And then essentially, because it is at the determination of the public bodies that we can accept public comment however we receive it. Yeah. And town council did change their opinion on that after. So. And basically, when this had come before the board previously, the board had determined that it was beneficial to allow robust public participation and comments. And so at that time, we wanted the public to be able to participate remotely. It might not be feasible for all open sessions for the public to participate remotely currently, just because of our infrastructure. We're just not there. But for regulatory bodies, I think that they should, and especially if there's any public hearings, that the public should be able to participate remotely, because that could include the applicants or it does not require that people attend in person. I don't know. So I'm fine with all the other changes. I would just strike out the town council strikeout because that's factually incorrect.
I think in the end, what your proposal is basically where that comment is made and it is struck out, is to actually leave it, remain. So basically do not remove that.
Yes.
That section.
So all open session meetings shall have the ability for the public to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would probably amend that based on, I would say a goal, I would say have an amendment that would read, the Wellfleet Select Board adopts a goal that all open session meetings should have the ability for the public to participate. Instructions on how to join a public meeting should be posted on the town Wellfleet website. However, recognizing the limited nature of the infrastructure in place, the Select Board requires only that regulatory boards or public hearings and this require the ability for the public to participate remotely. So, Barbara?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So leaving that sentence in place, but with the additional language, the language that you've added, does that mean that all regulatory board meetings would have to, in effect, be hybrid? That they have to have the public participation aspect, you know, a Zoom meeting, and if they're meeting, if the board is meeting in person?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion that maybe we just change it to all open session meetings may have the ability for the public to participate? That way, if there's technical difficulties, that there's not a shall in there, that there's some leeway, and then say, you know, it's basically like, if there's a public hearing at a, let's say, the planning board meeting, they're meeting in person now. Do they have to have a hybrid meeting? And then if the technology is not working, do they have to cancel the public hearing every time? You know, I just don't know the feasibility of.
So that's actually covered later about technical failures of the technology. It says that the chair is encouraged to suspend, but is not required. So that's already covered here. And I don't think you want to leave an option where it's up to where there's not clear direction. Especially, I mean, if you use like the planning board, you have abutters. You know, let's say,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of them do not necessarily live in Wellfleet year round, or are here when a public hearing happens, and should they be excluded from being able to comment? So.
Well, I agree with you. I just logistically, do we have the infrastructure there to?
Because of where they're meeting, yes.
For people to expect that they're going to be able to participate remotely, have that expectation and not come to the meeting, and then therefore not be able to participate because there's a technical, you know what I mean? I'm a little concerned about, you know, like the issue we had the other night, we postponed a lot of things, but some things can't be postponed. There may be people who it's important to them, and they could make it to the meeting in person, but they choose to go on Zoom, and we've basically set up an expectation that they'll be able to participate by leaving that shall in there. That's all.
Yep, Barbara?
Through the chair, does Mr. Waldo want to offer any comment on the capacity of the, you know, the town to handle that, you know, that kind of requirement?
At this position, and thank you for that, you know, at this current moment, we don't have the capacity for that. I think that a suggestion by Select Board Member DeBasso is good, because I believe we still have the ability to offer within the agenda setting what type of meeting it is. It gives us flexibility to say if it's an in-person meeting, if it's a hybrid meeting, you know, or if it's just an all remote meeting. And I think we'll have that ability. And if we're able to change just that language to may, it'll give us that flexibility to cover the period that we need in order to get the capabilities that we have to actually host all these meetings hybrid. I mean, I think ultimately that's where your policy is set right now, is to have all meetings videoed, to be able to cover all boards, and we're getting there. It's just, we're not going to be there July 15th.
Yeah, so that's why I was recommending just the regulatory boards and those holding public hearings. So that's, you know, Conservation Commission, Board of Health, the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Select Board. And those are the only ones. And those are all meeting in the COA meeting room. So once the system is basically a new computer had a hardware failure, once that's repaired, then it has the capability of doing that. So, you know, a lot of those will have applicants who are appearing before the board or committee you know, remotely. And I think that's an achievable target.
So through the chair, if I may, Mr. Waldo, do you agree that that's, achievable, the boards that the chair just named?
I believe that's how it's currently operating right now.
Okay.
I believe those regulatory boards are being held in a hybrid session.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, and a lot of those have abutters that are attending the meetings, so, or interested parties. So
Do you have the motion with Mike's language?
no, so I offered an amendment, which was where it says all open meetings shall be have the ability to amend it to the select board adopts a goal that all open session meetings have the ability for the public to participate remotely. And instructions on how to join a public meeting shall be posted on the town Wellfleet website, which is our requirement for that. And that the regulatory boards and public hearings shall have the ability for the public to join or to attend remotely.
Attend or participate remotely?
Participate, sorry. Yeah, participate. Well, I mean, it's up to the chair about whether or not individuals can participate.
Right.
So attend and or participate remotely.
Okay. So that's the motion?
To amend at least that amendment.
Ryan, you just said all open session meetings have the ability.
No,
shall have. That's what you said.
so I said the select board adopts a goal.
Right.
Which means that it's not necessarily
Okay.
implementable.
Yeah, and okay, I'm fine with what you said. That's
Yep.
fine. I just wanted to make sure you meant the words that you said.
Yep.
That's-
And
I'm fine.
it's just the regulatory that has the requirement that,
Okay, Michael second.
okay. Can I have a roll call vote on the amendment?
John, aye.
Barbara, aye.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Mike.
Michael, aye.
Okay, and then for the remainder of the amendments, are there any comments or by members of the board or?
The remainder of members of town council made?
Yep.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. So I move to adopt the remote participation policy as amended.
Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
John, aye.
Barbara, aye.
Michael, aye.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay. Okay, select board goals. So just so the board kind of understands kind of, I don't know, what I'm envisioning for the process here. So the previous meeting, we went over the town administrator's performance evaluation. My thinking is that you know, the individual members of the board have supplied goals at this point, is basically to you know, probably sit down with both Rebecca, roughly the assistant town administrator, and Rich, to determine which goals should be included in the performance evaluation. You know, we have to be understanding that, you know, some might not be appropriate within a given to be a performance goal within a given calendar year, or that we need to limit it to in scope to what's achievable. Rich did circulate a the goals that have been sent to administration to date. I don't know. Is there anything that anybody would like to discuss now?
Should we kind of, I mean, I think sometimes we've gone through these and sort of like seconded them as board members to sort of prioritize, you know, what based on how many members sort of prioritize a goal or something
Sure.
like that. I don't know.
So we might be able to do that, but let's not do it tonight.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah.
It's not printed in the packet, so yeah, I don't know.
We need to put it at a later date, or do we just wait and put it on an agenda?
Rich?
So what I can do, I mean, you know, as Ryan said, you know, I compiled your responses. I tried putting them into categories of where goals should be set and sent it to you guys for a draft. This might be a good opportunity, you guys, to review it, see if you want to change something, add more to it, revise some of your comments. And what we could do is just post it on a future meeting for discussion if you'd like.
Yeah. Kathleen?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was not able to get into town hall. I do have a list of goals. Should I present that to Rebecca when she returns from vacation, or?
The sooner you get them in, the better, I think, but yeah.
I have them here, so I'll my work is very busy right now, sorry.
Yeah. No worries. Mike?
Yeah, I just make a suggestion. If Kathleen can get them in, and if Rich, you can incorporate those and then send them back out. Maybe the board can sort of go through and we can each sort of prioritize the goals, like with the weight, and maybe think about ones that we think are not necessarily attainable for or useful for an evaluation because they're long-term goals, or they maybe are, you know, beyond the scope or outside of the town administrator's duties potentially, or something like that. If we can all sort of like review that list and sort of prioritize like 1 through whatever and see where those numbers fall, you know, when we all get together, just as a useful tool for the town administrator to sort of look at his priorities, kind of a long list, you know, what the select board is prioritizing out of these goals, some idea, and then from that, I think it would be easier to sort of tease out what should be part of an evaluation, you know, as things sort of drop to the bottom. If that makes sense.
Sure. Rich?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I would also suggest that some of these comments that were received really are similar in a fashion to some, and a lot of them are planning efforts. As an example, the marina, you have rebuild the bathroom, you have investigate the L pier, restriping the marina itself. Maybe it's just better to do an over encompassing, you know, marina review, you know, project or study, something to actually encompass a study to hit all those components, so we're not piecemealing each one of them.
Yeah.
Or you bring them into parking, a parking situation. Restripe town hall, I think, came up. Restripe the marina, maybe a park and circulation study to address Cahoon Hollow, drop-off areas, something along those lines to really get a broad scope of what you guys are trying to do, identify the problem, and then we can come back and actually set those priorities based on those evaluations.
Sure. Mike?
I'd just like to while we're talking about goals, I focused mine heavily on sort of like planning for future infrastructure, just because there's a federal infrastructure bill that's about to like sort of be dispersed, and the better we are, the more prepared we are to be in line with for funding with shovel-ready projects, you know, the better we are. There's a lot of projects that need to get done, so that's why I kind of prioritized those this year. But it seems like there's a lot of sort of priority on planning and infrastructure. So I think that's good. And you know, however we sort of mend that into like what can be done in a year. I mean, that's kind of administrative. And I would certainly look to Rich to sort of, who's been through these types of projects before, to sort of guide us on what he thinks is a reasonable expectation of where we can get in a fiscal year. So.
Yep. And also that the fiscal year is, you know, getting short.
Every day.
So every day it gets a little shorter. Okay.
Kathleen, if you'd like to swing by, drop off what you have, we can start adding that into this list so I can get that out to everybody.
All right. All right. So, okay. Yeah, we do need to do this tonight. Review and vote on the submission, the application for the Community Preservation Committee for the Maurice's Campground purchase. The deadline for submitting an application is July 15th. So in 3 days. Are there any questions or comments about the draft application, Mike?
I didn't have my hand up, but I was just going to say, maybe you can just give a brief synopsis of what this is for anybody who's watching.
So yeah, and I had meant to run this by the main Maurice's working group on Friday, but the meeting had, you know, there was an error with the posting, so that meeting couldn't happen. So I'm working with Gary, Elaine, and Olga Khan on basically how is the town going to finance the purchase of the Maurice's property, or the proposed purchase of Maurice's property. As part of that, you know, we've been looking at a lot of different, you know, funding, what we could use as potential funding sources. And one of them is to make a request from the Community Preservation Committee for CPA funds. So as part of this is a 3-acre portion of the 21 acres. It is currently vacant land. And you know, we needed something that was easily appraisable. You know, didn't have other restrictions on it really, because as part of this, it has to have a deed restriction on the parcel of land that's utilized for this. You know, so it couldn't include the area that is currently being used to operate the campground. Because we've agreed to, you know, running the campground for a period of 6 years, and that wasn't allowable for an area with a deed restriction on it. The store we obviously don't want to include at this time, and in terms of the portion that has the cabins and the single-family home office. That area is complicated enough that that would be difficult, especially with the restrictions there. You know, again, with a single family house, we've agreed to honor the tenancy of the leasee for a period of 3 years. So again, that's an area that it includes structures that are utilized for the campground operations currently. So it'd be, which wouldn't be allowable if there was a deed restriction placed on it. So the request is a total of $1,050,000. It's an or that's an estimate. As part of this, we do have to have an appraisal done of the acreage that's being identified. as well as an engineer's plan, so that there can be a deed restriction applied to it. And then I guess I would just ask Gary Sorkin, who's on, to speak to it as well.
I'm happy to answer any questions. The CPA will meet next week to consider all the applications. And I think one of the big questions with respect to the Maurices is whether it makes sense for us to make a grant to the town as opposed to support a bond offering. And that will be based upon the CPA accounting that we hope to get in the next few days.
Barbara?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I support requesting that amount from the CPC. I just had a question about the language on page 5, whenever you want to get to that, to the exact language.
Sure. What's the question?
So it says request to CPC 1,050,000 of the accessed value of the 3 acres identified, whichever is less. And I'm guessing it's
Appraised.
well, okay. So, but is it 1,050,000 or the appraised value of the 3 acres?
Mhm.
Okay,
That's what it's supposed to be.
okay, or the
It should say
appraised.
assessed, but it says accessed.
Okay, so it's 1,050,000 or the appraised value of the 3 acres identified, whichever is less.
Yeah.
So that actually was changed. Gary, why don't you speak to that?
Good, thank you.
Sure. We had advice from the state CPA coalition that we needed to have an appraisal.
Right.
We haven't had that appraisal yet. So I believe that the value of the land is simply a matter of what we estimate the value of a single acre of land in Wellfleet today at 350,000. And so the 3 acres arrived at the 1,050,000, but the actual amount will be the appraised value or 1,050,000,
Okay.
whichever is less.
But whichever is less,
We can't, the CPA can't, sorry, Mr.
yeah,
Chairman.
because it can't be a value more than the appraised value of the
Correct.
3 acres. Got
That
it,
is
okay.
correct.
Yep, thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, so my only concern really was, and I think we discussed this at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting, but it's still not totally clear where it's drawn on the map. I just want to make sure that we're leaving enough space here that if the town were to decide it wanted to sell that store or subdivide and sell the store, that there's enough land there in front and behind and set back on the side that it would be able to subdivide that and sell it. Because I'm not sure what the threshold has to be on that as far as our zoning is, but you
Sure.
know,
So within the zoning district is 40,000 square feet. So
So that's it.
approximately an acre,
An acre.
which is this would leave the store with a little bit over an acre.
Okay, that's all I was wondering. And I think I remember, Gary, we were talking yesterday where the CPA doesn't need the exact delineation. It can just be a drawing. Is that what you were saying?
That's correct. The advice we received is that we don't actually have to have a site survey to make the award, but we do have to have an appraisal, and the appraisal obviously is based upon a certain amount of land. So I think it's somewhat self-fulfilling, Mike, that that appraisal will be based upon the drawing that Ryan has done.
Okay, and you were sure you left enough land there? There's enough land in there to carve out an acre for the store?
Yes.
Okay.
Rich?
Gary, just for clarification there, this still will be deed restricted and you will need an engineered plan. You know, should we receive an award, you would still need an engineered plan that would need to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So we may not need it in the beginning, subsequent an award, we may need it.
Correct. You are correct, Rich. When we actually filed the deed rider, and for those of you, for everyone's information, the deed rider is prescribed by the state. So the DHCD has a standard deed rider, and the requirements of that are such that we would have to correctly identify the land through a site survey.
One more question, Gary, real quick, if that's okay,
Sure.
for you, Mr. Chair. So the land stays in the possession of the entire lot. It's just part of it's deed restricted.
Correct. So it cannot be used in perpetuity for any application other than for affordable year-round housing.
Right. Okay.
And as part of this, the deed is, the plan is that the Wellfleet Housing Authority, they are considered a third party. So the deed restriction has to be held by a third party. And so, you know, the Wellfleet Housing Authority would be the one that would be holding the deed restriction. So, Tim Sayer. Sorry.
Hello, thank you. A question to the chair, to Gary, please. You mentioned a grant or a bond. Can you explain the difference between what you mean by a grant of $1 million or a bond of $1 million? Thank you.
Sure. We're still waiting to determine how much unused CPA funds we have available. But if we have an amount that is close to perhaps the amount asked, you know, the cost to do a bond is relatively expensive. I mean, the carrying cost on that will probably be approximately 60%. So it costs you an additional on that $1 million. It would cost you an additional $600,000 if we went through a bonding effort. It's not that the CPA holds the bond, the town would hold the bond. We would just be a funding source towards that. But that would be over, whether it's a 20 or 30-year bond, be over an extended period of time. The alternative is that we would come up with a flat sum of money that we could offer as a grant that would help to actually reduce the purchase price directly at the time at which you have to make the payment. And that would actually cost the town a lot less.
Sorry, he's muted again. Tim, does that answer your question?
It did answer my question. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure that the difference was explained, and he did a good job. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I move to accept the application for Maurice's Campground. Yeah. That's not clear.
CPA application?
So it's I move to submit the application for Maurice's Campground to the Community Preservation Committee on behalf of the town no later than July 15th, 2022 at 4 p.m. Yep, Barbara?
Do we need to specify, you know, the requested amount, the language that was just discussed earlier about the appraised value?
It's included already.
Okay.
So where it has the funding, CPA funding requested.
Okay. Okay.
So.
Michael, second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Michael, aye. John's muted.
Barbara, aye.
Ryan, aye.
John's muted.
John, are you muted? No. His has been showing muted all meeting. But he can actually speak.
Could you hear me?
No.
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, okay, sorry, so I voted aye.
Okay, Kathleen?
John, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Kathleen, aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Funny, I'm not showing me muted on my screen.
Yeah, it's being weird with you tonight. So That's all I can say. It's still showing muted on mine, but it's been like that the whole meeting.
Let me try something. Wonder if it's this
Well,
remote.
it's working now. Don't fiddle too much. The next, man, all right. You know what? Just go in here. We are on to statement from the select board to the ZBA regarding 95 Lawrence Road. So this uses a lot of the same points that are made yeah, for the Maurice's property as to justifications. When this came up before the board the previous time, the board felt that they didn't want somebody speaking on the behalf of the board, which is understandable. So this is basically a statement as to why the board might feel, it's draft statement, might feel that the 95 Lawrence Road development is critical, that we could, a board member could read off at the ZBA meeting on the 14th. Are there any questions regarding this, Kathleen?
Yeah, there's a few corrections. In your first paragraph, the Wellfleet Select Board supports the POA, should be CDP.
It's both. It's preservation of, it's the C. Well, yeah.
It's the Community
CDP.
Development Partnership.
Yep. Not the, yeah. I guess.
And then, I mean, I appreciate the work and the effort you've done on this, Mr. Chair. But is there a way to
shorten
get it all on one page? Our statement on one page?
You can shrink the font.
I mean, I don't want to edit it, but I think that it's a better document if you can, for the ZBA. And again, our ZBA has been on the front lines of our affordable housing crisis for a long time. So I'm not sure they need, all this other stuff. They really do get this and they know this project. So I would, suggest that you simplify the letter a little bit to get it all on one page.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I think just for the sake of expediency, because they're going to be getting letters from several organizations that I feel comfortable just approving this, because there's nothing in it that I have a problem with, and it's 2 pages, but it's a letter of essentially of support that somebody who's going to the ZBA meeting can read. So is that what we're planning? Somebody to read it out?
Yeah,
loud?
I mean, we can drop the second paragraph without really changing the substance too much, which
And then you'd have it all on one page.
describes basically,
Okay,
the process.
I'm fine with that. I just didn't want to go through a lengthy process right here and start picking it apart.
Okay, Barbara?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I support the letter and in whatever form we agree on. The only thing is the last sentence that says, the last clause, these will be homes for local households. So DHCD has rules, all the housing agencies have rules about fair housing and marketing, and you're not, unless there's something really different about this, the project can't be totally reserved for local households. So is there a way we can modify that language? I don't want a letter from us saying these will all be for local households when the outcome, will be to provide housing for some local residents, but for other, new neighbors as well.
Sure, so the initial lottery is 70% local preference.
Right.
I don't know, I couldn't think of a better way to,
Could we just write, this will provide homes for local residents?
yep. I think,
Is that better? I mean, it's not so,
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's just that there's sometimes a misunderstanding about this, you know, DHCD lets an initial round have a strong local preference, but after that, there is no local preference.
it's true. Is that a truthful statement, or should we make it softer than that? This will provide homes for local residents. Are you comfortable with that, Barbara? Or do you want to say something else?
It's.
You want to say
I guess that's.
regional?
Yeah.
Not even that, though. It's.
yeah, I mean, we could just say this will provide homes for families.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I was trying to avoid families because, you know.
They're single people too.
Yep.
You want to make them feel.
Yeah. Just increase, you know, well, you've already said it, halfway to the 10%, but more importantly, we'll provide, you know, affordable homes. Because I get the point. I think the point was, sure, it gets us to, you know, it increases our SHI, but it's not just we don't just care about increasing the SHI, the units on the SHI, we care about providing the homes, affordable homes. So any language like that would be fine. It's just, I know in my experience, people see or think that it's reserved for local households, and it, you know, it's not. These will provide, you know, homes for local residents and other, you know, new neighbors, something like that.
I think, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Could we just have it say, this will provide year-round homes for Wellfleet? For, I guess you can't say residents because they're not residents yet.
Yeah. Let's just say this will provide year-round homes.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, they will be residents once they're
Yes.
here. So
Right. Yes.
residents, no matter who comes.
John,
John,
are you actually muted now?
I am.
No.
Your paw. I can't. You're not moving.
You have your hand up.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. You already suggested dropping the last paragraph.
No, the second paragraph,
Oh, okay.
which is, you know, basically how we got here. Or, I don't know,
Okay. My bad. Sorry.
like when it was presented before the select board, and, you know, it was a little unnecessary, so,
Okay, Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
okay.
I move to send. I move to approve the statement from the board, from the select board to the ZBA regarding 95 Lawrence Road as amended. That's with CDP instead of CDC, the removal of the second paragraph, and the change of the last sentence. These will provide year-round homes.
Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, and do we want to delegate somebody to read it?
When's the hearing?
14th.
14th.
I'm willing to do it. It's at 7. It is going to be virtual.
Okay.
Are you gonna get it to their packets?
Um,
I can't do it. I have a dentist appointment actually at 7. Weird time to have a dentist appointment.
That is weird.
Yeah, well, like a dentist, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with Ryan doing it if you would like.
And I'm not sure if it will get into their packets or not, Kathleen. We can certainly submit it to them. But, you know, today's the 12th. And
Right.
yeah. So I'm not really sure when their packets are finalized. So,
In advance, pretty far advanced,
yeah.
but we can email it to them.
Okay, so I guess I moved to delegate the chair to read the statement at the ZBA hearing on the 14th.
I'll second that and thank you for writing it.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote? John, you have your hand up?
No.
Okay,
Well, let me fix that.
okay, can I have a roll call vote?
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay,
Am I still showing muted?
yep. Yeah, as I said, it's been working all night, so.
Don't mute him.
Okay, we have special town meeting warrant. Rich? So, and, 1 second, let me just, yeah, okay.
So I just want to say that this is a work in progress. This is a document that was hot off the press. We wanted to get it into the packet, and you know, I've been trying to work on it this week to just make the simple errors, you know, corrections to those errors. You know, replace annual town meeting with special town meeting. Still need to just confirm date, location, special election dates, and stuff like that. I believe we have that confirmed. I've made a number of updates actually since you guys received it. And I think that the goal here right now is to make sure that any article that you recall that should have been part of this special town meeting, it's not in here. Your chairman has already offered me two. One had to do with a wildlife protection amendment, the general bylaw for feeding the wildlife. I have included that. There was an affordable dwelling development article that I have since inserted. I do have questions about the cottage colony, the housekeeping article. I'm not sure what that pertained to. You know, 6 months ago when you guys were actually developing the annual town meeting before this got cut. So I've been working with the former interim town administrator to try to make sure that the carryover is done correctly. But I really need you guys to take a review, look at this. I'll be in communication with you guys individually if you want, if you see something that should be on here. I'm hoping to have a draft of this at your next successive meetings. I hope to have an updated draft for you guys on the 19th. We could take a look at some of the changes that I've made. You know, there's still some discussion of different enterprise funds that need to be made, you know, or you know, possible creation of enterprise fund for the Maurice Campground. So that most likely will be a second article there. When we develop more into the financial end of things, you know, I'm going to be amending numbers in terms of what we're going to move over for stabilization funds and stuff like that. So it's really an active document. It's basically a first draft before you. After tonight, I'm going to send it off to council. I'll be sending it off to our staff. I'll be sending it off to the moderator and basically start getting their feedback and start pulling all this stuff together. So by the time this warrant deadline has to be posted, we're ahead of the curve. And we're looking at right now about August 10th to really have this warrant finalized by then.
Okay, are there questions from the board? Okay. So we don't have to take any action on it tonight. Committee liaisons, Barbara?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am asking the board to consider adopting a policy of having liaisons to all boards and committees, or instead of that, to some boards and committees as the board sees fit. I'm just presenting this idea informally. I didn't want to add to the packet, but if there is, if the idea resonates with my colleagues, then I can provide a draft policy for the board to review at the next meeting. So this is a practice of having liaisons to all boards and committees that I've seen in Truro, and it seems to work well. So that is what prompted me to suggest it here. The purpose of the liaisons is to assist the committees in their work. It's not to provide oversight or to try to direct the committee's work. One advantage is it provides an established contact for each committee to a select board member for any questions that they might have. For example, how do I get an item, on the select board agenda? I have a neighbor who's on a committee, and he asked me, a month ago, how do I get something on, on the select board agenda? And this would be a case where if there were a select board member in place, he would know who to call. So that's just a kind of a simple example. But having these relationships also allows the select board to identify areas where collaboration might between different committees or between town departments and committees, where collaboration might occur, that's helpful to the town as a whole. It also enables the select board as the policymaking body to see where issues are starting to develop. The boards and committees all see kind of different aspects of the town, and I think there's a lot to be learned that could be useful to the select board in considering policy developments. I don't think it's burdensome on select board members. It's not a requirement to attend all meetings. What it typically involves is reviewing the agenda of the boards or committees that the liaison is attached to, just to see the issues they're considering, being available to attend if the committee if the chair requests, and to provide any advice that the committee would find useful. From what I've heard, the liaisons actually find it, rewarding to help the committees out where they can, and to also just better understand the work that the committees are doing, and to be able to share that with the select board, because boards and committees are doing a lot of really great work, and we don't always necessarily hear about it in a way that I think we should. So I think there are a lot of advantages to having liaisons, and I know I would like to serve as a liaison to whatever boards or committees that the chair or the committee as a whole sees fit. So thank you for considering the item.
Sure. So are you looking for some assignments tonight?
No, I guess I was just going to raise this idea, see what my colleagues think, if it's an idea that gets any traction. And if so, maybe come back to the next meeting with a draft policy, or at least bullet points explaining how this would work. And then that would be the time, if it's agreeable to the committee members, to the board members, to talk about assignments.
Sure. I mean, to me, for the housing, it would make sense for Mike, because he's already part of the affordable housing cost. I don't know, but that's just me.
Sure.
Mike?
Yeah, I guess I was kind of wondering, the scope of this. I mean, I certainly feel stretched pretty thin between work and the Affordable Housing Trust, and then I serve on some non-town boards and things like that. So, personally, I don't know that I could take on much more. than I'm currently doing. And I do have a little reservation about, select board members being liaison to committees and potentially, not that anybody in this group would do that, but sort of feeling the authority or the need to sort of direct or to influence the committee's work. And I kind of like the way that we do things in Wellfleet, where we have our committees working and functioning, and then coming to the select board to present the work that they've done. But that said, I think there are probably some committees that it makes sense to have a liaison, like the planning board, and I don't know what else, but a lot of the members in the committees sort of overlap as well. Like some are on multiple committees and boards. So yeah, I don't. That's my 2 cents. I don't know where the rest of the board feels. But.
Okay, John. John.
Uh-oh. All I see is a raised hand and a microphone that's muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond quickly, I think it is very important that if we do this, that it be made clear it's not oversight or to direct the committee work. It's really to serve as a resource for the committees, for what they want. So thank you.
John, you had your hand up.
Yes, can I be heard yet?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. That's why I volunteered to serve as liaison to the dredging task force. I think it's good to keep a conduit of communication open, especially to certain key boards. And yeah, I think it's an excellent suggestion.
Kathleen?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I kind of, in the past, prior to COVID, when things got a little bit more hectic or complicated with regard to select board meetings, we were having committees and boards, we were inviting them to come and give us a presentation. This allowed the select board to hear updates from a particular committee, offer suggestions, if you will. But they were part of the agenda, the select board agenda in the past. Myself, I try to attend ZBA meetings, housing meetings, planning board. Yeah. So I mean, I go when when the time permits and sit in. But I do think there's some truth to be said about a select board member having some undue influence. I do recall that being a bit of a problem for a previous select board member at a finance committee meeting, but that was back in the day. So thank you.
Okay. All right. So we'll look at I guess, a draft policy, a future date, and possibly some liaisons. I do want to echo that I only have so much time to get.
Right.
It makes sense to sort of instead of make a policy, just sort of like volunteer to be liaison for a particular board that you have interest in, or several boards if you feel that you have the time. Often what I do is listen to the board meetings like when I'm going to sleep. It's kind of ridiculous, but I don't have that much time, so
yeah,
sometimes or I'll like listen to them in the truck if there's no one else there, if there's meetings that I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but just to sort of know what's going on. So,
yeah, I mean, the reason to have a policy is just to make clear, in writing, that it's not oversight, and it's to benefit the committees, and that's why I suggested a policy, not to sort of make it.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but I think you're right on. Yeah, I'm done.
So So I'm happy to prepare a draft policy and, for the board's review and assignment to, to some committees as we see fit.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Select board reports. Are there any? No. Town administrators report, Rich. So before you start, I really like the scope. I mean, to get updates on all the departments is great.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's getting late. I don't want to drag you guys on too long. There's a couple of key highlight ones that I'd like to just point out, and honestly, I do thank the staff for taking the time to add their input. I mean, this takes time out of the day to them to collect their thoughts, prepare them, send them to me, but it works very well. A couple of keynotes I just want to bring forward. I did participate with a drive along with the National Seashore Superintendent, Brian Karlstrom. We wanted to go around, take a site tour and discuss, basically our collaboration, a lot of shared resources. In Wellfleet, there's the national park is just all around us. And, we both have interest in certain areas. And he gave me the tour, and it was a nice way for him to reach out, get our introductions. We talked a lot of things, including, legal and law enforcement on Ocean View Drive. We talked about future there. We talked about future capital projects, where the erosion's occurring, where it's not. We talked about bugs. We talked about everything, and it was great. It was just a very informative session that we had. So I appreciate him reaching out and actually scheduling that with me. And thank just very thankful to have them as a collaborator in our town. We did, as a follow-up to last select board meeting, execute a contract for a phase 1 environmental assessment at Maurice's campground. It's actively underway. We should be done with that by the first week in August. A couple of things that I wanted to point out, we just went through a very busy period in this town. We went to a year end. We started a new fiscal year. We just, renewed a whole bunch of permits. We just had one of the busiest holidays of the year. And some of the stats that are staggering for me is with the beach program. In a 9-day period, they were able to amass over $160,000 in beach sales alone in a 9-day period. I mean, we're talking 2, maybe 3 staff members at most. Being able to process that much information is remarkable. In addition, they issued 126 fire permits, and the Whitecrest parking alone had raised over $25,000 in sales just in that 9-day period. So impressive numbers there. Good to see the community back in action after what were some difficult years that we've had. In terms of Council on Aging news, we did hire a new outreach coordinator, Sally Largy, who's been with the town since 2003, was promoted to the outreach coordinator. She was the former office assistant and transportation coordinator with the Council on Aging, so we can congratulate her promotion. For the public out there listening, the application for the preschool voucher program is on the town website. This was a big thing for the override vote, was to be able to keep this funded, keep this alive. Have a chance to take the opportunity. The applications are on the town website. Back in the winter, Officer Michael Allen initiated a grant request to replace portable breathalyzer test machines in the cruisers. The police department had recently received award that they did actually receive award, and they're going to be able to replace those breathalyzer tests. The current equipment is aging and basically phasing out. So kudos to just, these officers that work independently. They take their own initiative. They actually drive things forward. And really, that's what good fundamental government is when we all participate and we promote and we tell people good job and good things. So I did want to highlight that and thank you to the chief for adding that into his update. The assistant shellfish constable of propagation, Johnny Clam Mankiewicz, did an interview with WCBB Chronicle to feature our shell fishing recycling program. In this environmental show, will be aired on Wednesday, July 20th at 7:30 p.m. on Channel 5 ABC. So if anyone's interested, wants to check in on that interview, it's coming up, I believe, next week. And lastly, I just want to give kudos to everyone that put on just a fantastic July 4th parade, July 4th holiday, fantastic. I was in front of Town Hall with my kids who, very young, 1 and 3-year-olds that really haven't been introduced to parades yet, due to COVID and all that stuff. And it was just great to see the progression in their faces of first little piece of candy being dropped and, can I go out there? Can I touch it? To getting sprayed with water. It was just fantastic to see. It was a great event. Kudos to police, fire, DPW for the cleanup afterwards. And speaking on July 4th, there's 2 letters included in the town administrator update from both our police chief and our fire chief, just pretty much going through the events of the weekend. As you can see, it was very, very busy. The word record setting was used in there. We saw over 100 buses dropped off at Cahoon Hollow, not including taxis and Ubers and other things that people are using to get to Cahoon Hollow Beach, for that July 4th weekend. Surprisingly, overall, from what I can gather, things were, operated as best as it could, given that many people. I'll give the chief an opportunity to speak to it more. I will say that these record-setting events is not to Wellfleet alone. I think I believe I heard the town of Dennis use the same phrase for a couple of their Bayside beaches, Corporation Beach, that you've seen large volumes of people. I think that the thing that struck me most was one of the last sentences, or maybe even the update of the chief was, I think we need to get together in the fall, discuss this a little bit. Just had a great, drive along with the superintendent who, advised me that, their law team is in close communication with the law team, and maybe over the winter time, we could just devise a plan or discuss these things, hash them out, and see how we can do it a little better next year and just constantly make a little improvement. So with that, I'd offer Chief Hurley any further comments if you'd like.
Sure. So actually, before we get to them, I'd like them to, both Chief Hurley and Lieutenant LaRocco, to speak to their update. But Kathleen, if you have questions other than Cahoon Hollow, could you address them now?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Waldo. Where is our Cracker Jack accounting team at with regard to certifying free cash?
Currently, right now, we are importing basically revised financials into a portal with our auditors and requesting them to revise their audit for fiscal year 20. That is the first step for us to basically certify free cash. We've also been in communication with DOR to let them know this is the process that we're in, this is the current status. We expect the auditing team to come down in the next 2 weeks or so, spend a couple of days in Wellfleet, review the rest of the financial documentation that's just too big to actually scan and put into the portal, and have a revised audit for fiscal year 20, so we can go into meet with DOR. So that's where we stand right now. Thursday, we'll have another financial meeting with the auditing team, or the financial team, to talk about year-end budget transfers, things like that, and they might be able to offer any further clarifications if you need.
Sure.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to the town administrator, is there any update or anything we need to know regarding the negotiations pertaining to the upcoming dredging, particularly the issue of property transfer in regards to mitigation?
From my understanding, is there still work being done with GEI, which is the contractor working for the town to work through the Army Corps of Engineers permit approval process. The part of the mitigation that was proposed was basically putting a restriction on the Hilda property, as well as 2 conservation pieces of lands that had transferred at this recent town meeting that had just got approved. So the proposal was brought forward to the Army Corps of Engineers, and they basically have reviewed it. They offered further questions. Their question was, who's going to monitor this in perpetuity? At which we responded, we are seeking the Division of Fish and Wildlife to see if they will take the responsibility of monitoring this restriction moving forward. It has to be a third-party entity. We can't monitor ourselves. The Division of Fish and Wildlife actually monitor in Provincetown and Truro, and so it makes sense to reach out to them. We expect to have a response from them probably in the next week or so, and that will just be another box that we can check with the Army Corps of Engineers, and hopefully we'll be that much closer towards possibly having an agreement for permitting to bring forward to the select board.
So I think you guys skipped a step, if that's what's happened. To propose lands to be that currently do not have restrictions placed on them to be restricted, that are currently under the care of the select board, is problematic and should have come before the board before they were even proposed. I don't know. So we'll have to see. I mean, you could have proposed something to the Army Corps of Engineers that the board decides is not in the interest of the town. We'd also need a vote of town meeting for any disposition of town-owned land, including with I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to bring the team together and come before the board. I mean, a lot of this stuff precedes me prior to me being here, so I really don't know where that line stands. So if that's the best route to go, I'm happy to bring the team before the select board for an update.
Barbara?
Yeah, I feel I don't know much about this at all. So Rich, when you come back, maybe just provide some background information. Or maybe that's something I can get from you or from a department to get up to speed. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need a presentation. So, okay, Lieutenant LaRocco and Chief Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just before the lieutenant gives his update to his memo, I first really want to thank the National Park Law Enforcement Division and the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office. To be quite honest, without their help, that July 4th weekend, we would not have been able to have the law enforcement presence up on the ocean side and to be able to keep order and organization up there. So I just wanted to open up with that thank you to those groups. And of course, to our staff who by Monday morning, we were like one-arm paper hangers at the parade. They were exhausted and pushing through, but it was a long weekend, but very proud of how the staff handled the whole weekend. So I'll turn it over to the Lieutenant for just the update. He was the incident commander up at the beaches for the weekend.
Okay, Lieutenant.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo what Chief Hurley said. I wanted to thank the National Park. They were a big help, along with the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office. It was a huge help this year and increasing the patrol up there. Of course, I don't have my document in front of me, but I do remember the weekend. We did have over 100 school bus drop-offs, and being up there, Sunday was our busiest day. Surprisingly, I believe Saturday started off with some rain, so I think that's why it may have held back a little bit. But Sunday was the craziest I've seen it up there. We did have over 50 something buses that one day, with each bus holding over 40, 50 people per bus. along with over 500 drop-offs between Uber, family drop-offs. We did the best we could. We kept the road open. Traffic began lining up at the Beachcomber parking lot at 6:45 a.m. and was backed up all the way to Whitecrest Beach parking lot by 7:45 a.m. So we had to open up one lane each direction to keep traffic flowing. We counted 120 cars, what the Beachcomber could hold, and then we turned everyone around. We did the best. It was busy. We were exhausted, large crowds overall. We did have one that was placed in protective custody. We did have one arrest. We had one domestic and a couple other intoxicated subjects that were returned to a responsible party. Overall, that's the more or less of the weekend. We made it through it. It's definitely something we need to discuss for future plans on how we want to move forward with Cahoon Hollow. But great kudos to the staff, and it was a long weekend.
Yeah, we need a long-term plan as to what to do.
I agree.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair, real quick too. I mean, I guess we're a victim of our own success. You know, we have such an organized system up there that I'm not going to say it looks flawless, but it just seems to attract more and more. Social media, as many other Cape towns saw, it's such an amazing thing. You know, it's you TikTok and Instagram 1,000 of your closest friends, and they show up within a few hours. I mean, it's an amazing phenomenon that law enforcement were trying to stay ahead of, but can quickly overwhelm small communities. As far as costs, I also just want to pass on, you know, like anything, it costs money to staff these events. I know there was some comments throughout the community with such a large police presence up there. You know, the costs were divided out between the bus companies, you know, who are realizing, you know, the drop-offs and the effect it has. So they are hiring details, the Beachcomber, the beach department, and we have a special events line within our department to handle parades, beach, and other issues. So I just wanted to throw that out there publicly, that the costs were shared around for the weekend up there.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
Yeah.
Mike?
What is the contribution from the bus companies? Do we know that? I'm just curious. I don't know.
I believe so the biggest drop-offs, a couple of years back, I began trying to track the bus companies and tracking the most drop-offs, and the most drop-offs seem to come from the local companies on the Cape, which is the Funk Bus out of Provincetown and Cape Destinations out of the Mid-Cape area. Between the two bus companies, I believe they paid for 2 officers on Friday, 2 officers on Saturday, 2 officers on Sunday, and maybe 1 on Monday, which was pretty scaled back. Monday was our obviously slowest day, with people probably going back to work on Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Well, that's better than nothing.
Yeah, you know, I have to be honest with you, and through the lieutenant's hard work over the past few years, I mean, we really can't mandate this on the bus companies. They really saw how stretched we were, and, you know, they were willing to pitch in. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great.
Topics for future discussion? John?
I think this would come under that heading. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I was approached by somebody from the beach sticker office, concerned about some of the complaints that have arisen about the use of the website and so forth. And I wondered if there might be a point to bringing our town web designer over there at some point, maybe scheduling an appointment for somebody from the web designer's office to come down and observe the operation and talk to the personnel there with a view towards coming up with ideas for making improvements. I personally have fielded a number of complaints, people who just approach me or call me or whatever. And I used the site myself and didn't really have an issue with it, but I could see where some people might. Does anybody have thoughts on that? I told them I'd look into it.
Yeah, we don't have a web designer.
Maybe we need new web design.
It's been
Pretty bad.
website that we should.
I mean, yeah, Eastham just had theirs redone. I'm not sure how much that cost. I think it was like 50, somewhere around there.
Who did the beach sticker office website?
It's
1998.
Oh, Jesus, really?
I don't know. No, it looks like it. Window.
I will say that our goals are still draft. The select board goals are still draft. So if someone cares to add that to a goal and we decide that we want to make that a priority. I mean, I know the website does have some outdated stuff. I haven't got to that yet. There's some things that I've noticed with just the town website that could use some adjustment.
I'll send something in, sure.
I think also it's more and more the way the town the residents interact with the town. So it has to be usable and user friendly, and it's not really.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I'll have something to send it in to you.
Mike, your hands up.
No, I just don't put
Okay.
it in.
New business, there isn't any. Vacancy report. Approval of minutes. I submitted amendments to the 24th, but it was really late, minutes before our meeting.
Just take those up next time.
Yeah, but I would like to at least move the minutes of November 2nd.
Second, so moved, I guess.
Okay. So I'll second your motion to move them. So can I have a roll call vote on the minutes of November 2nd, 2021?
John, aye.
Barbara abstain.
Michael, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Definitely abstain.
Okay, motion carries 3-0 with 2 abstentions. And then we'll hold off on the other 2, I guess, unless people are ready to move on the minutes of.
May 2nd,
Yeah,
May 24th, I mean, sorry.
no, May 24th is the one I submitted amendments to.
June 28th.
Yeah, June 28th.
I didn't see anything that required attention on that. Yeah, I'll move that we approve the minutes of June 28th.
I don't even see June 28th.
Okay, I'll second.
I don't
Sorry.
think I have that one in my packet. I'll just abstain, I don't care.
No, if it's not there,
I don't think I have it on my online packet.
yeah, I would hold off on moving those minutes then.
Okay, yeah, I don't have it.
Should we hang on to those?
Oh, wait, okay, I see it. It's just below the motion. Okay. Sorry.
I'm getting tired, so
Okay, let's just wait until the next meeting then.
Should we hang on to these or will they be included in the next packet?
they'll be included in the next packet, but you can save them if you want them.
Oh, I'm okay to move these minutes. I read them already before when I first read the packet. It's fine. We can move 28th, Tuesday the 28th.
Do you want to make the motion?
Yeah, I move to approve the June 28th select board minutes as amended or drafted.
Okay, second. Okay, roll call vote.
John, I.
Barbara, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Kathleen, I.
Okay, and with that, I move to adjourn.
Okay.
Barbara, second.
Roll call vote, please.
Michael, I.
Barbara, I.
Brian, I.
We see one more.
Kathleen, I.
Okay.
John? Did
All
John
right.
vote?
Yeah, John, I.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Apologize for interrupting you, Barbara.
That's okay, no problem.
Love you all.